I am male, 18, but I love my math teacher. She is 42. Hi, I'm Danny. I am not a popular guy in school until recently. Do not think of me as a loner. No, I am not. I have friends, Jeff, Phil, and Bill. They are the best. The four of us had attending school at the bottom of our preference list until some new teachers were posted to our school to replace the retired ones. That was the time I had a change of view about the school. Do not get ahead of yourself. Academics was not the reason for my sudden change of mind. Before I tell you about what made me love schooling, it is good to be familiar with my background. I thought I had been living a normal life. Even to date, not so much had changed. Some people would say I got worse with my weird taste of a woman. I don't care. All I know is that love is in the eyes of the beholder. My full name is Daniel Dawson. I am the second child out of 4 children of Dawson's family. My father is a pilot. He barely comes home. I wonder how he has the time to be with Mum to make us. Even in the festive period, he is either in Italy, Brazil, or one of his weird islands. It is a norm for this family to celebrate Christmas and Thanksgiving without our father. Mum usually defends by saying, he is trying his best, and he is doing all this for the family. How am I supposed to understand that? But I was fine with it anyway. I had only seen my dad physically not more than 20 times, thanks to technology. He now speaks with us regularly, either individually or as a family. I remembered when I got my first opportunity with the school basketball team. I shared my achievement with the family, and luckily for me, Dad got to know. He promised he would be available. I was all optimistic even though I didn't trust him. To be candid, I have never trusted him. How will I trust the person I barely know? On the day of the match, I was aligned with the first team. I looked around for my father. He was nowhere to be found. I was disappointed, even though I was certain he won't come. My mom and my siblings were there to cheer me up. Thank God he didn't even show up. I was awful to the extent that my coach had to sub me off in the first quarter, and he never gave me any chance to prove myself again. There goes my hope of becoming a professional basketball player. We lost the match 102-67. I guessed I wasn't the only bad player on the team. My mom is on another level. She was a nurse before she resigned. Only Dave was aware of that. It was immediately after she gave birth to me that she resigned from the health department. She now has her toys store. It sounds like a masculine job, but my mom is doing great with this. She told us that she resigned from her job and began the toys selling business because she wanted to be there for us since our father is all busy. That is true. We met everything to her. We stayed at her place after school, and we all go home as a family when she is done for the day's work. That had been the norm until we all got to high school. Everyone with his or her own business. We only leave home together but don't come back home as a family. Everyone has now developed their interests. Things are now done individually instead of as a family. My mother tried to return the family to the good old days, but it wasn't that easy. We now have something to care about. Howbeit, we still eat dinner together as a family. That is where we share our stories. We know about ourselves at the dining. My 2 little sisters are the taciturn ones, while Dave is so boisterous and expressive. For me, I am just another member of the family. My favorite member of the family is still my mother. I love to open up to her privately. She understands me best compared to anyone else. My elder brother, Dave, is the perfect example of an elderly figure. He is very accommodating and understanding. Unlike the other 3 of us, he understands Dad better. He even develops likeness for some of Dad's hobbies. He loves visiting new places just like Dad, but had vowed not to become a pilot. To him, that is the riskiest job ever, and to add to that, it won't be the best available job for a family man. Dave wants to become a pharmaceutical sales rep because of his love for visiting new places. He is currently studying pharmacy at the university. He is a very bright student. He was the best graduating student in his set. He is also the valedictorian, and he gave a wonderful speech. I was so proud of him that day. He is not good at sport, none of us are, but he is my #1 fan even though I suck at basketball. He has no interest in sport, but he has never missed any of my games. He is playing his newly found role as a father very well. Besides academics and visiting new places, he is also fond of card tricks. My dad was fond of that too. Both of them spent more time doing card tricks. I don't know much about card tricks, but my dad is very good. So is Dave. Dad taught Dave how to go about card tricks and gave Dave his cards, but Dave is now on another level in card tricks. While at high school, he had competed at many levels and he had medals to prove for that. He was the regional and national champion before leaving the school. Our school does not only suck at basketball, it sucks in every game. But the only medals we had won from chess and card tricks were all won by Dave. Before leaving high school, he was a name to reckon with. Who doesn't know David Dawson? Most people expected me to fit into his shoes when he left high school for college, but soon knew they were thinking highly of me. I am nothing close to him, even with the wide difference between us. Dave is very proud of his little brother and I am proud of him too. He means a lot to the family. I had pharmacy as a strenuous course, yet Dave still had time to check on us and share festive moments with us. He is such a darling. Mom would be proud of that kind of son coming out of her vagina. I am proud of being the next. My dad had supported his dreams without asking questions. Dave was the luck of the family. Danielle is my immediate younger sister while Dora is the last. Those two are best of friends. They do things together. Funny enough, they don't share their feelings with either of our parents. Unlike Dave and I, we shared our feelings with Dad and Mum respectfully. Those two share their feelings. I am not proud to be called their elder brothers, because I don't know anything about the two of them. Danielle is in a relationship with one of my friends, Phil. I didn't buy this idea. I almost fought with Phil, but I later got to understand that Danielle liked him. Coming between them will do more bad than good. I quit getting between them and focused on helping them nurture a good relationship. I told Phil that if he breaks my sister's heart, I will break his head instead. Scary, isn't it? I didn't mean it. I was just buffing you now, right? So far so good. The two are doing well in their relationship. I wanted to know more of what was going in between them, but Danielle was not pleased with that action and she is ready to take me up on that. Naturally, Danielle is not a vocal person, but in this matter, she threw tantrums and caused some unnecessary scenes. I quickly calmed myself and never interfered in their matter. Dora, on the other hand, is almost like Danielle, but she has an interest in shipwrecks. Dad once asked her what she will like to become. She was not afraid to say, she will like to be a diver. She meant that. She has also been traveling to islands and some other places to see shipwrecks. She had once watched documentaries on shipwrecks for a whole day. She took all her meals in the room that day. No one dares to distract her. She has a do not knock post on her door. I won't lie, and Dora is the most respected individual in the house. You can't just afford to trespass. She had some collections in her room. She had been keeping her weird collections since she was 6. Mum was not fine with how things are going with her. Mother wanted her to be more sociable. But Dora is not interested in people. She is more interested in her dirt than in people. The only person that understands her is Danielle. Danielle is a good listener. She is not good with talking, unlike Dave. She barely fights with other people because you don't even know what she is thinking. By so doing, Dora sees comfort in her. Me, I am the most confused person in the family. Everyone seems to have one or two things that interest them except me. To make matters worse, I have selected the wrong people as friends. We don't have any plan for our lives. We do things as we are moved based on impulses, except for Phil, the businessman. I was the only one to make the basketball team once. The other 3 can't even throw the ball. They were sent out of training on their first trial. In terms of academics, I wasn't the best either. Dave was a genius while I am just one of those boys in class trying very hard not to repeat a year. My grades aren't too bad, but nothing compared to Dave. Most people compared with my brother, but even with me trying, I am still not an inch close to him. After several trials, I got confused and I started making mistakes. I made wrong decisions. Chose the wrong friends, and it got late to make those corrections. Even though I am much better than my friends, I still love their company. Jeff is more like the head of the gang. He gives directives on what we are to do as a team. All his ideas are about crafting things and building stuff. We are not the party kind of person, but we are very useful in starting one. We have never hosted any party, but we are good at designing and setting up one. Jeff is the ringleader because his mother is an event planner. He sometimes goes to work with his mom to help her. My friends and I are weird to others, but when we went camping with the school, we are most respected. Due to our creativity and wide imagination, we make camping interesting. Hunting for games is my favorite event in camps. Jeff, Phil, and Bill have their weirdness. Phil is the business mogul in the gang. As a teenager, he has his own company. He is involved in recycling plastic waste. This was his grandfather's business before he died. He took over from him and had made it more prosperous compared to his grandfather's achievement. Phil was the black sheep of the family until he discovered his part. Phil is my best friend. We have been friends since preschool. Phil and his family are our neighbors. He is the last child of the family and by far the difference. Every person in their family is in the law firm, but Phil hates the white and black gown. He had been trying his best to be unique and different from other members of his family, and he is successful. Phil even employed Jeff, Bill, and I into his business as part-time workers. What else can a friend do for you? He even pays us handsomely. Such a nice guy. Since I had stopped going to Mum's toy store to help her, I have been going to his place to earn myself some cash. He is now having intimate affairs with Danielle. I didn't like it at first, but as an elder brother, I want the best for my little sister. And more so, Danielle doesn't buy the idea of me muddling in her matters since she doesn't interfere with mine. Bill is like a mind suggestion. He is a politician. He had been involved in so many protests in the past, but the one that he did that gained him national recognition was when he protested against the mayor for his lackadaisical attitude towards the School Child Act. He was optimistic about free lunch for all pupils and students at school. He had written letters, but they were not attended to. He booked an appointment with Mr. President and poured out his mind to him. Mr. President respected his opinion and asked the mayor to put it in place. I was proud of him. He was given a national award for it. Unlike the rest of us, he is in love with history and books. On average, he reads nothing less than 4 books in a month. But the sad part is that they are not of academic importance. Most of the books he reads are usually about politics and history. His favorite subject is history. It all began on one fateful afternoon when there was an announcement for all the students to come to the hall. We all get out of our various classes. The hallway was filled up. We could barely walk. All of us were trying to get ahead of ourselves. There was pushing here and there. Jeff whispered into my ears. He had been using the opportunity to pinch people and hit the backside of the ladies. No one caught him. He made me see him hit a lady's buttocks. The lady looked back, looked around, but since she didn't notice anything, faced her front. We laughed. I joined him in doing the same thing. I was almost caught, but this time I gave a straight face as if nothing happened. We eventually got to the hall. Mr. Howard, the principal, started speaking to us. He introduced us to a few of our teachers who will be retiring. He spoke so highly of them. My friends and I were not paying attention. We were even playing stone, paper, and scissors. Mr. Albertson, the old geography teacher, was awarded as the longest-serving teacher in the school history. It is common within the school premises that some of the teachers were once his student. The school choir was allowed to perform. They made a great show. There was a round of applause among the audience. They also sang the school anthem in another lyric. It was a great performance. It caught my attention. As they were rounding up, we saw Mr. Howard showing some strange faces on the way to the podium. Before he started to talk this time, he cleared his throat first. "These are your new teachers," he said. "They had been transferred here from other schools in the town to replace the retiring ones," he rejoined. "Starting from the nearest person to me is Mr. Smith from Onward High, Mr. Johnson from Whitney High School, Mrs. Williams from Maryland High School, and Ms. Brown from Cartersville High." From that moment till the end of the program, my eyes were set on the stage, but I wasn't listening anymore. My eyes were set on Ms. Brown. She was the perfect lady that met all I had hoped so in a lady. No other lady had caught my attention in this manner before her. I looked at her and noticed every detail. She had a sculpted figure which was twine thin. Her waist was tapered and she had a burnished complexion. A pair of arched eyebrows looked down on sweeping eyelashes. Her delicate ears framed a button nose. A set of dazzling angel white teeth gleamed as she blew gently on her carmine red fingernails. It was a pleasure to see her flowing, moon-shadow black hair. Her enticing, constellation blue eyes gazed at me over her puffy, heart-shaped lips. She felt her lips taste strawberry sweet when even without kissing her. She had a bouncy personality and a sugary voice, which I adored. Not content to be just another drone, she wore a vibrant dress. "She's the one. She is the one. She is the one built by God to satisfy me." I kept saying those words to myself. "Hey bro, are you not going home?" That was Bill. The whole place was almost empty, yet I didn't notice. Ms. Brown and the other new teachers had left the stage. Mr. Howard is nowhere to be found. How come I was still seeing Ms. Brown on the stage? I should have left school for Phil's backyard recycling factory, but I didn't. I left school for a home in a hurry. The first time in a long time, I got home with a smile on my face. It was obvious that I was happy. Danielle and Dora asked me who the lucky girl was. "No one," I replied. At the dinner, Mum just smiled at me. When everyone had gone to sleep, I overheard my mum talking to Dave on the phone. "I think he has gotten himself a girl." She was speaking to the other person on the line, whom I assume must be Dave. I lied on my bed. Then there came the next night. I don't know how I got to the countryside, but it was fine since Ms. Brown was there too. The moon's delicate light had just turned the world aflame with silver when I saw her. She had a comely figure which was stem thin. Her curvilinear waist didn't surprise me as much as the saffron tint to her complexion. She must be a native, I thought to myself. Her crescent-shaped eyebrows inclined slightly as she saw me staring at her. I yelped at being caught. Her languid eyelashes of velvet black blinked once slowly as if to invite me over. When I came closer, I noticed her scrolled ears and her elegant nose. She nuzzled me with her nose and I couldn't believe it. It was the custom for her people, I reckoned. It was love at first light. Her luminous, heavenly white teeth flashed as she pawed at me with her film star nails. Her hair was a glorious tumble of star-beam gold and her virility brown eyes set my heart a-thump. Her oxbow lips positively drooled with goodness. Oh, those sugar candy sweet lips, her elegant personality, all mesmerized me. She may not have had a saccharine voice or retro clothes, but what do you expect when two Labrador pups meet in a dog pound? Danny, Danny, Danny. A voice from behind keeps calling my name. The voice sounds familiar, but I am enjoying the figure of Ms. Brown in front of me. Then, I felt a cloth leaving my body. I opened my eyes. It was a dream. Oh my gosh, are you not going to school? My mom asked after she succeeded in waking me from sleep. Get yourself cleaned up, get dressed, and your food is in the kitchen, she said as she left my room. I was about to stand up from bed when I noticed that my short was wet. Oh no, what the hell just happened? I yelled. I had released, and by the look, this can never be a one-time release. Probably thrice or 4 times. It was much and noticeable. The bedsheet is sucked already. I can't leave it like this. I stood up from the bed, took away the blanket and bedspread, replaced them with a new one, run to the bathroom to wash up. I spent most of my time brushing my teeth for no reason. I groomed my hair. This time I changed the style. I get dressed in a well-ironed cloth and a shoe to match, sprayed me and go for my food, then left the house. Normally, I would wait for Bill to knock at our door then join him as we go to school. But today, things were not the same, not even me. Even though I left home without Bill, I still got to school late. Little did I know that he didn't wait for me after knocking at the door several times. Or did he? From the school entrance and through the hallway I was the center of attraction. Everyone was gazing at me. I noticed but pretended I didn't. I found my way to my locker to get some of my things, then came Laura. Not the most beautiful girl in class, but most people say she is. To me, Elle is far cuter than her. I think it is about how yourself. Exactly what I was doing that day. Hi handsome, said Laura. I looked at her as if I had an interest in her. But the truth is I don't, not at all. Laura, what's up? I asked. There is a party at Luke's place this Friday. If you don't mind, we can go together, she requested of me. Oh, Luke's party. Why won't I want to tag along, but I have this thing I want to do. I won't be able to come. I'm sorry, I said as sorry as possible. She sighed. I noticed she was trying to be calm as possible. Okay, what about going to watch a movie with me on Saturday? Then we might spice things up later in the day. He asked of me again. Oh, that too, it is just that. You'll be having something important to do too. She finished my sentence. Exactly, I said scornfully. She hissed and left me there standing. I didn't care about her anyways. I just wanted to see Ms. Brown, that's all. My friends noticed the change and came to me. I would have asked if today is your birthday. But I know you're born in May and this is November. So what is your problem? Asked Jeff. Nothing, I responded. I know you've tried to be cute, but I wasn't expecting you to be this good-looking, said Bill. Calm down guys, nothing is up. I just felt like dressing nice today. I retaliated. It is Kike, I have been paying you too much. I will have to reduce your pay by 20%. Phil rejoined. You must be kidding me, I rejoined. So I can't dress well again. That's the problem, Bill interrupted. Are you going to see the mayor? Let me help you out. It was tough talking with those guys. They were determined to stress me out. We moved after a long chat that sounds like a police investigation with me. We got to our class and everyone sat on their seat. I was the center of attention in the classroom. I felt like Dave for the first time. I have never felt that kind of attention before until now. I was sitting gently while the whole class wasn't settled. Our class teacher, Mr. Alexis, came into the class with Ms. Brown to introduce her as our new math teacher. Here she is, I said to myself. I knew it was wrong fantasizing about my teacher, but I can't just help it. My eye was set in her breast. I imagined her being naked, then I concentrated on her nipples. I could figure it out with her dress on. I tried to look at her hips. I guess she noticed me looking at her, but I don't think she minded. After the introduction, Ms. Brown ran a quick test on us. We submitted and she took the sheets to her office. After a few minutes, she called for me. I got nervous. I did the test very well. Or did I impress her too much? I got to her office, I greeted her and she asked me to have my seat. I sat down and gave my test result. I scored 8 out of 10. What do you think? She asked. I need to buckle up, I replied, knowing for sure that wasn't the right answer. You did well, she said. Then she continued, do you know how old I am? 28, I presumed. No, you're wrong, she said. How old are you? I'm 18, I responded promptly. Okay, you're now legal, isn't it? Yes, Ma, I responded, swallowing my spit. I'm 42 years and I was caught looking at me at the class in an unacceptable manner that is bad of you. Do you find me attractive? She asked. I couldn't say yes. I turned my head repeatedly. She stood up from her chair and sat on the table very close to me. She looked directly into my eyes and said, it is not a bad thing if you like me. I looked at her face and nodded my head. She undid a few of her buttons and bent close to me. I could see her big babies. Things are getting tense and I have started getting an erection. No, this is bad. Do you feel like touching them? She kissed me on the lips and whispered to my ears, keep it a secret. She went back to her seat, sat down, and asked me to leave. What just happened? I could not believe what just happened in there. I left, but my mind was not settled. Is this what I think it is? I am attracted to my math teacher. Is she also interested in me, or was she just playing with my emotions? Anyways, I will love to squeeze those babies on her chest and penetrate her. Oh, I am thinking that loud.
Hi guys, I am Tracy. Please, make my story animated. How freelancing and working online has been pissing me off. Hi guys, I am Tracy, and I recently got into freelancing after losing my freedom. I was born into a family of 4 which were made up of my father, my mother, my brother, and me. My parents were very wealthy people who co-founded a tech company, Zenit. The company was worth an estimated amount of $300 billion and was comfortably seated as number 5 in the top 10 global tech companies. It was said that Rome was not built in a day, and neither was their company. My parents made it mandatory that every staff who worked for them in the company or at home was well acquainted with that fact. Zenit was born out of hard work, self-denial, and persistence, and they were not going to let people who lacked these qualities ruin the company. My dad had a background you would not envy. He never knew his parents because he was left at the doorstep of the orphanage home by an unknown lady. Life seemed unfair to him as the orphanage was no place to raise a proper child. However, fortune smiled on him when at the age of 2, he was adopted by the Freemans. Mr. and Mrs. Freeman had been married for 8 years without a child. They went through every medical procedure available at the time, and it was during one of those procedures that it was discovered that Mr. Freeman was sterile, and his wife, who had suffered from fibroid in the past, now had a damaged womb. The news came as a rude shock to this young couple, but they soon picked themselves up and decided to face life with every ounce of positivity. This led them to the adoption home, where they were soon enchanted by this cute little boy whom no one knew much about. All legal requirements were met, and this 2-year-old boy was taken home. A celebration was made to receive my dad, and people came to congratulate the Freemans. My dad was renamed Trevor by the Freemans, who loved him in no small way. Although the Freemans were not wealthy, they lived a comfortable life, and taking care of my dad was never a problem. Life treated my dad very fine until tragedy struck the Freeman family 3 days to his 18th birthday. The Freemans were returning from a picnic when they were robbed at gunpoint. The robbers equally made away with their life, and my dad, who was with them, sustained 2 gunshots to the chest. Luckily, he survived but had now become orphaned once again. My dad, who was now 18 years of age, couldn't go back to the orphanage, and so he began life as an independent adult. The Freemans left only enough to see him through high school, and so he had to take up several odd jobs in college just to make ends meet. It was while he worked as a cleaner in a restaurant that he met Patricia, the woman who would be his future wife. Patricia was a young, industrious woman who was getting set for college. She had parents who could fund the bills, but she wanted to gain financial independence from her parents, so she resorted to taking several jobs to generate money. She was a worker in the same restaurant as a dad, but Dad had been employed before she came seeking employment. Dad was assigned to teach them how to handle certain equipment, but it turned out she was no learner, as she had already worked 3 jobs before then. It was during this time that learned that my dad was already in the college which she was preparing to attend. This further drew them together, and they soon found themselves falling for each other. Dad was the first to make the move. He was thrilled by the fact that Mom, who had parents who could foot her college bills, still chose to work. She was different from other ladies. One time when she was cleaning the storage room, she tripped over a bucket and was headed straight for the floor. But Daddy's timely intervention saved the day. He had caught her before she could hit the floor, and while she was still searching for the words to say thank you, he started reaching for his buttons. She cared less if someone walked. Dad had lit a flame in her which needed to be put out. This was the birth of something that would last for a lifetime. Their relationship blossomed. Mummy often supported Dad with the little savings she made. While she was a freshman in college, Dad was a year ahead of her. But it was not an issue. Although they lived apart, she would sometimes spend the weekend at his place, so he could assist her with some school work. They inspired each other, but I think Mom inspired him more. She was always thinking ahead. It was in Dad's final year after the school failed at the implementation of digitized courses that she suggested they start up a technological firm that would offer both hardware and software solutions to individuals and firms. Although this idea had great potential, they both knew it required the kind of capital that they didn't have, but were determined to try. All the same, so while Dad graduated and sought funds, a mom who was now in her finals drafted up the structure of the organization. Upon Mom's graduation, Daddy proposed, and 6 months later they were married on a very simple occasion. Having made their union official, they resolved all the more to make sure that they succeeded. This made them take the decision not to have children until certain things were put in place. For a company that was just in its infancy and lacked a physical location, they found it very difficult getting clients even though the competition was very little. They made and distributed business cards that only drained the little capital at hand. They tendered business proposals that were meant to create partnerships with several institutions, only to be turned down over and over again. Their breakthrough finally came when a friend of her dad who ran a private college institution needed some supplies and installation. This marked a turning point in their career, and they have consistently worked at the development of the firm. 3 years after their first major business deal, Mom and Dad decided it was time to make babies, and upon their first trial, they had twins. My brother and I, that was all the kids they were willing to have. My brother took after my parents. He always sought independence from infancy. He would rarely allow anything done for him even though we had staff at home who were there to attend to our needs. This greatly pleased my parents. They saw his attitude as a statement that he didn't take their efforts for granted. My mom saw much of her in him. She knew this boy could survive even without his parents' wealth and influence. I, on the other hand, gave them great concern. I was the direct opposite of my brother, and who it was that I had taken after, they couldn't tell. My parents were both hard workers who never allowed their wealth to negatively affect the way they related with people. So they couldn't understand whose gene flowed in me. I was the definition of laziness. Over time, I had perfected the art of laziness that if you didn't want something done, just give it to me. I enjoyed the privileges I had. I was bossy to the staff around, and I loved doing my thing in my own time, which I never had because I was busy doing nothing. If I had my way, I would compel someone to spoon-feed me, bathe, and clothe me. The only relief my parents had was the knowledge that I wasn't too lazy to breathe. Yeah, it was that bad. Unlike my brother, I always exhausted my monthly allowance before the week ran out. My grades were not so bad. At least they were not the worst in class, but neither were they as good as that of my brother who always came top of the class. At 16, we were both in our final year in high school, and our parents were throwing a party to celebrate the company's 20th anniversary. Several renowned people in the society would be there. Top politicians were among the special guests of honor. It was a week before the party that our parents informed my brother and me that we would be given the opportunity to each present a 20-minute speech before everyone present. This speech would feature which career path we had chosen, and how it would directly or indirectly influence the growth of the company. They, however, failed to inform us that the audience would be allowed to ask us questions based on what we had said. It was a day I didn't look forward to, but I knew that I wasn't ready to have my monthly allowance denied me because I let my parents down. The day finally arrived. As expected, it was colorful and everything was put in place to ensure that the event went according to plan. As expected, the high and mighty were there. The anniversary was being aired live, and so everyone was expected to be their best. Things moved smoothly until it was time for the children of the founders of the company to make their speech. We had to submit our written speeches 15 minutes before we were called up to make them so that they could be duplicated and distributed to the guests. My brother was up first. He said he had long decided to take a career path in software programming, so that way, he could work in the company, become directly involved in writing software programs which the company could sell to generate funds. As expected, there was applause from the crowd, and a guest asked what inspired him to take a path in line with the family business. We all listened as he said that he got passionate about the family business over time as he saw how dedicated my parents were towards the growth of the company. This inspired him to take steps that would prolong the legacy of the family long after my parents were gone. This response further evoked applause from the crowd. You could see my parents swelling with pride. It was now my turn to impress everyone, especially my parents. My brother had made them proud so many times, and I was prepared to make this my first. And the world who were watching would see just how great the kids of the great tech company were. I started my speech by telling them that the company which they had gathered to celebrate was not just founded as a means out of poverty, but its primary aim has always been to make humanity better, bring us closer, and then make life easier. Zenit was founded to bring a digital solution to the digital problems, both hardware and software which existed then and still does now. I made them understand that money was just a byproduct of the solution, and that's why Zenit had made so much of it even though it was never the chief aim. I further stated that my choice of career did not stem from the desire to amass wealth, but it came from the philosophy of my parents' company, which was to bring solution in every legitimate means possible to every aspect where humanity greatly suffered, which was why I would be going into politics. And although it had no direct relation to the family business, I was going to help defend the interest of citizens, thereby creating a legacy which had its roots in my parents' legacy. And whenever I am spoken of, people will agree that I was the personified legacy of my parents in the government. I marveled at the things I said, but my parents were more stunned. This was a part of me that they had never seen, thought about, or dreamt of. They didn't seem to mind the fact that I had just told the world that I wasn't going to be directly involved in their business. What mattered to them was the fact that I was going to use my life for something meaningful and productive. I never saw coming what happened next. A standing ovation from everyone almost led to my collapse. I never knew I could say what I had just said. This was my moment of glory, and I was going to bask in it. After the applause had died down, the wife of a serving senator asked a question. She wanted to know why a freelancing company was thanking me for patronizing them and hoped to do business with me again. I felt stupid. I was stupid. I had employed the services of a freelancer to help me prepare a script, and when it was delivered to me through my email, I just printed it out. I had about a week to go through it, but I was too lazy to do so, otherwise I would have noticed the message of gratitude at the bottom right of the paper. I bowed my head in shame as I walked off the platform, and made straight for my room. I had embarrassed my family in front of the whole world. How my parents handled the rest of the night I could not tell, but I know that the party ended rather quickly, and on a sad note too. The next day, newspaper headlines and television channels made matters worse. It was a field day for journalists, who were paid by rival companies to spread the news that the daughter of the giant tech firm called Zenit was a scam. My parents' company temporarily lost investors at a fast pace. The company's board of trustees was made up of 6 shareholders. My dad, my mom, Mr. Jack, Mr. Kent, Mr. Roberts, and Mr. McCarthy. My dad had 20% shares, my mom had 20%, and the rest of the board members each had 15% shares. Mr. Jack had been a shareholder in the company for over a decade. He was in my dad's class back in school, and they both graduated the same year. He initially ventured into the same line of business when he saw how the company was making rapid progress. His startup company did well at the initial phase because he had the means to raise the capital needed at its inception and few human connections, which gave him little influence. However, my parents' company had already established its own presence in the market, and it soon became very clear to Mr. Jack that his company lacked what it took to make it. While realizing that his company was on the verge of collapse, he then decided to approach my parents for a merger. My parents accepted the merger, but it only got him a 15% stake in the company. That way, his clients became that of the company, and it further led to the growth of the company. He became disturbed when investors began pulling out in droves. Mr. Kent was a multi-millionaire who initially made most of his wealth from agriculture, Agriculture was his life. He was deeply committed to farming that he saw marriage as a distraction. Although he wasn't married, he had a son from a harlot, and he raised him on the farm in the hopes that he would take over someday. He had various ranches scattered all over the country. He was strategic about his business, and he only made friendships that greatly favored his business. He became a shareholder in Zenit 5 years ago, so he could use the income generated to further invest in his agricultural business. As you would guess, he found the thought of losing investors a hard pill to swallow. Mr. Roberts was fondly called Rob, and as it suggests, he was a robber. Mr. Roberts was a gambler who owned a popular casino that was situated in almost every state in the country. Sought opportunities in everything. He offered help only when saw an opportunity to exploit. He never put his money where there was no chance of multiple returns. He has been a shareholder with the company for 5 years simply because he saw it as good business. As a gambler, he knew it was time to pull out when the company started losing investors. As for Mr. Mackenzie, he had been with the company for over 15 years. He was not just a shareholder, but he was a staff at the company who genuinely wanted the success of the company. He was one person my parents always appreciated having around because of his sincerity and integrity. He had a real estate company he co-founded with his wife, but he left her to manage it while he worked for my parents at Zenit. He was the only one who was concerned not just for the money and investors who were leaving, but for my parents' legacy too. It was his concern for the company that made him call the attention of my parents to the fact that the other investors were thinking of selling their shares to the chairman of the company's rival, Mr. Pablo. Mr. Pablo founded a rival company called Apex. He was a man who was known to delve into every kind of business that brought in money, and it didn't matter how. Rumors had it that his tech company called Apex was only an umbrella that covered his dirty line of businesses that gave him the major part of his wealth. He was rumored to be into drugs, human trafficking, and every kind of illicit business you could think of. He always found a way to evade the law. He was a 3-time divorcee who was repeatedly accused of domestic violence. He had children that he couldn't account for. His hatred for my family and our company began 5 years ago when a client whom he had supplied inferior products to had he taken to court, and the client ended up seeking my dad's services. Mr. Pablo claimed that my dad was responsible for everything, and ever since he constantly sought ways to get back at us. He finally got his opportunity when I messed up, and he tried buying the shares of the major stakeholders of my father's company. So that way, he could take over our company. When my parents learned that Mr. Rob had already sold his share to Mr. Pablo, my dad quickly bought that of Mr. Kent, while my mom bought that of Mr. Jack. This quickly aborted the plan of Mr. Pablo, who would have to wait till when next I opened another window of opportunity. It was 3 weeks later, after my dad had sued the journalists who had spread the lies about my parents trying to use their kids to manipulate people into investing in the company, that they confessed to being paid by no other than the Apex chairman, Mr. Pablo. My dad wasted no time in taking him to court, and it was then all the terrible deeds he had been involved in began coming to light. Families and individuals who couldn't get justice in the past against Mr. Pablo were now coming forth to testify against him with heartbreaking evidence. There was no escaping from Mr. Pablo this time around. The judge ruled against him. He was sentenced to life in prison and made to forfeit all his assets to the government, who will use them to compensate his victims. The court equally ruled that the shares he had bought in our company will be forfeited to the company, who would then distribute it to its shareholders. There was a buzz in the whole country. The next day, newspapers carried the headlines, "The Apex Predator is gone." They labeled my family as the heroes of society, who helped the voiceless masses get justice. Some said that it was the window of opportunity that I created that led to the downfall of Mr. Pablo. This caused investors to rush back in, and they were so much that the company had to turn down hundreds of them. In the space of 2 months, the company witnesses a 300% growth. It was clear I had almost ruined their legacy. They ignored me for the period when they were trying to clear my mess while thinking about the kind of punishment I deserved. I knew an apology would do no good, as I had apologized too many times without making a change, so I patiently waited for the inevitable. My punishment came in a way I never expected. I had the staff assigned to me all withdrawn from me permanently. My allowance was off. I had to eat whatever was on the menu for that day. To crown it all, I had to take up a freelancing job in writing. the very thing I had used to embarrass the family. I was made to undergo a 2-month writing course, so I could be taught what I needed to know about writing articles, scripts, speeches, and whatever it was that I would be writing. 2 months went rather fast, and I was now ushered into a world of excruciating torture and pain. Yes, work for me was torture and pain. Since it was a freelancing job, I was made to work from home. That way, I was constantly monitored. There was just no escaping it. I could only spend the money I earned. No sooner had I begun before I discovered how difficult freelancing was, especially when you were working remotely. I had a hard time getting hired even though I joined multiple freelancing platforms. In every platform I joined, there were already professionals who had years of experience and a very attractive portfolio, so clients would always choose them over one who was a novice and just starting. It took me about 3 months before I was eventually contacted by a prospective client who backed out after stating that I lacked the needed experience to handle his project. The next prospective client who almost awarded me his contract became skeptical after she checked my profile and discovered that I was the infamous daughter of the owners of Zenit. It was frustrating. Really, really frustrating. I got lucky when a 14-year-old student contacted me. He wanted me to write a 10,000-word essay on a topic that I was needed to research before I could write it. I was ecstatic. I knew I had hit a gold mine. A 10,000-word essay was going to pay me just enough money to enjoy a bit of luxury. It had been almost 6 months since I last spent money the way I wanted, but after this gig, I knew things would temporarily get better. He needed it in about a week, and even though I never saw the possibility of having it ready in 2 weeks, I wasn't going to watch this money pass me by. So I told him I could have it ready then. I got mad when he told me that he was only able to pay $10. $10? What in the world would I do with $10? When I was still on a monthly allowance, I had usually spent $200 in a day. And yet it wasn't even enough. How can I now spend 7 days working just for $10? I quickly ended the conversation. I was now very frustrated. It had been a while since I last spent money on myself. I couldn't go to my brother for help as he was already forbidden from giving me money or helping me out with my work. Out of desperation, I quickly accepted an offer of $30 from a client who wanted a 20,000-word essay on global warming. He needed it in 4 days and demanded that I sent him the progress at the end of each day. I had always hated routine, but for the sake of $30, I had to keep up. I never liked being bossed around. No, I was used to giving orders. This new development was one that I wasn't going to get used to anytime soon. It took me an additional 3-day period to complete the project, but on the 7th day, I discovered that he had already requested that the platform call off the contract, which was in escrow, due to my inability to meet up on the 4th day. I had just wasted 7 days of my time, and I could not take it anymore. By my own estimation, I had suffered enough. I knew that the only way out of this was if my parents lifted the ban. My family had regained the love, respect, and admiration of the masses because the apex predator was now behind bars where he would be spending the rest of his life. And I had a part in that. I thought it was only fitting that my parents restored my lost glory. I made up my mind to speak to them about it for the first time since I began serving punishment. I hadn't bothered pleading with them when they dished out my punishment, because I knew I had messed up and felt guilty about it. But all I felt now was frustration and more frustration, so I decided to speak to plead with my parents. I walked up to them immediately after they got back from work. I had barely begun stating my frustration when the tears rose from within me. Although you could barely hear what I was saying as my words were now mixed with tears. My mom and daddy perfectly understood the situation. But to my amazement, they just stood there smiling. They didn't show any sign of sympathy. It seemed as though they enjoyed my misery. Well, I guess they would because I had caused misery too. I was only getting served with what I deserved. When I discovered that I had not allowed them to say something yet, I quit talking but continued sobbing. By now, I had already created a scene, and the whole staff in the house just watched and enjoyed the drama. I knew that they would be glad to see me cry. After all, I had made life almost unbearable for them all. Each one of them had a tale of woe that I had scripted. Finally, my dad said that there were various reasons for their decision, and the very first was to make me understand that in life, actions would always have consequences. The ban placed on me was to make me finally appreciate those around me who helped me in one way or the other. It would finally cause me to value money and watch how I spend it, since I would only have what I had worked for. Finally, the ban would make me rise beyond laziness and get things done for myself. It was at this point that he then said that the ban would remain in force. No more monthly allowance for me till I got into college, and no staff will be reassigned to me even after I got out of college. I fell to the ground, crying as they both walked past me. Hey guys, what would you do if you were me? What would you do when you realize that you have lost your privileges because of laziness? What steps do you think I should take to change the minds of my parents? How I waited for Christmas Day. Hi there, I am Mabel. I grew up in a small neighborhood where we were predominantly farmers. It was a very peaceful atmosphere where we hardly witnessed crimes because it would be very easy to fish out the perpetrator. Because we were few, everyone knew all about everyone. Nothing was a secret there. News traveled fast. A very interesting thing about us was the fact that we took every celebration very seriously, especially Christmas Day celebrations, and those others that came only once a year. Christmas Day seemed to always have a magical thing to it, as you would always find people put their differences put aside just to raise a cup. It was a day when everyone had enough to eat. As children, we always looked forward to that time because we got the opportunity to visit or receive visitors and relatives who always brought gifts. I really enjoyed this part because that was when I had the opportunity to get new clothes and other things which I couldn't get during the year. One person that I eagerly anticipated her coming was my Auntie Stacy. My Auntie Stacy was my mother's younger sister. She was a tall blue-eyed blonde who had lots of C. She was close to my mum, and Mum would often tell stories of how they looked out for each other while growing up. My mom and Auntie Stacy were the only children of their parents. Their parents were very religious people who cared more about their reputation than their two daughters, so when Auntie Stacy got pregnant while preparing for college, their parents, who could not stand the shame, threw her out of the house. They cut her off from the family and even demanded that my mum keep her distance from Auntie Stacy, otherwise she would suffer the same fate. They never showed an iota of pity, not even when the parents of the young boy who got Auntie Stacy pregnant rejected their daughter. Well, my mom was not going to stand by and watch her sister treated so badly because she made a mistake, so stole a little amount of money from her parents, and then ran away with her sister to live in the ghetto of another city close by. Painful still was the fact that their parents never bothered to go after them even when they learned of their whereabouts and their pitiable conditions. My mum did all she could to help feed them both while they were expecting the child, but the ghetto life was no place for two young girls from a religious background, and within 3 months, my Auntie Stacy suffered a miscarriage. They couldn't go back home at this point, and even if they did, they would not be welcomed, so they resigned to their fate. They both started adapting to the life of the ghetto while they looked for a means of survival. Within a short time, they had gathered up some money to send just one of them to college. My mom, who was ahead of my sister, had dropped out of college when she ran away to take care of her, but now the opportunity came. She asked my sister to reapply for college. That was how my mother gave up her academic pursuits for her sister. Auntie Stacy would always say that my mom gave her a second chance at life. Auntie Stacy, who still had a beauty that was captivating, quickly had boys flocking around her, but it wasn't difficult for Auntie Stacy, who had suffered the pain of deception and rejection from family and lover, to keep them at arm's length. She had learned her lesson in no bitter way, and she was not ready to walk down that path twice. Besides, she wouldn't want to disappoint my mum, who was still making sacrifices just to keep her in school. Auntie Stacy eventually graduated from law school and set up her law firm, which was beginning to gain a very good reputation in the city. She remained ever grateful to Mom, and she always looked for every means to show her appreciation. After her sister's graduation, my mum then decided to start paying some attention to herself. Up until that time, she had lived her life for Auntie Stacy. Mum began making plans to go into livestock farming, and that was when she moved over to the neighborhood, where she eventually met my dad, who was already plying his trade along that line. They got married informally on my dad's farm, with Auntie Stacy and the neighbors as guests. Auntie Stacy was never really in support of her sister getting married. She was scared that her sister could fall into the wrong hands. Her own bitter experience had left her with a scar on the inside that constantly told her that all men are the same. Marriage was off the table. She had long decided not to get romantically involved with any man, and even when Mom tried getting to change her mind and consider accepting one out of the numerous suitors flocking around her, I would watch as Auntie Stacy would laugh and say that she was already married to my mom. She said Mom was her everything, and so she had no interest in marriage. Although she joked about it, her actions were in line with her words. Auntie Stacy would often call just to see how we were doing and if we needed any help. But even though Mummy usually said that everything was going on well, she would still send some money to us. She used Christmas as an opportunity to get us the things that we needed, knowing full well that my mom would have no other option than to accept it since it was Christmas. She got me clothes and toys because she knew my parents didn't have enough money to buy me these things very often. So now you can understand why I eagerly anticipated her coming. The last time when she came to visit, she had promised to take me back with her when next she came. I would be spending Christmas at her place. I couldn't wait. I knew that Christmas would be the best because Auntie Stacy was really fun to be with, and for the second time in my life, I would be spending Christmas outside our neighborhood, and I was certain that the experience would be better than the first. The first time I spent Christmas outside my neighborhood was at my dad's brother's place. Uncle Rick was a short, stout, and robust fellow who quickly forgot a promise soon after it was made. All through my life, he always broke the Christmas rule. I had celebrated Christmas with my parents 14 times, and in the whole of my 14 years, never for once did he bring along a present during any of his visits to our home. None for the kid, none for parents. He always ate and drank all that was available. He even took some while going home. It was clear that he loved the Christmas period because it was a means for him to feed off people. He just loved taking advantage of the generosity of people during this period. When visiting, he came empty, but when leaving, he left with his stomach filled to stupor and some of the meals well packaged. The only thing he ever left behind were promises he never intended to fulfill. I had seen this attitude over the years that I eventually lost any excitement when he was around. I knew that he was only there for himself. Each time Mom suggested visiting him for the first time, he always found a way of evading it. Dad was not surprised. He knew his brother too well. My dad and Uncle Rick grew up fighting because Uncle Rick always seemed to want the things that belonged to Dad. They were the only children of their parents who were very prosperous farmers who supplied their farm produce to various industries in the city. Uncle Rick was very cunning right from the start. Even though they were both expected to help out on the farm, Uncle Rick never seemed interested. There were times that he would pretend to be down with an illness so that he would not be asked to help out, and if he ever went on errands, that was because there was something in it for him or he was just trying to impress a girl. He would oftentimes be seen helping out a lady with certain chores which he never did at home. He was known to be fond of ladies. Although Uncle Rick hated working on the farm, his parents knew that he loved negotiating things to suit him, so they decided that they were going to be taking him along each time that they went to the city to sell their products so that he could learn how to put his negotiation power to good use. There was a time when they were to make a trip to the city very early the next morning, but Uncle Rick suddenly developed a fever by night, so he had to stay back. My dad was to take cards of him and equally supervise the people working on the farm, so after their parents left, my dad quickly prepared something for Uncle Rick before going to the farm. While it was noon, he hurriedly left the farm to go and attend to Uncle Rick. On getting home, he began hearing funny noises from Uncle Rick's room. Fearing that the fever may have escalated to something worse, he quickly rushed into the room, and to his amazement, he found Uncle Rick and a girl making out. In the heat of the moment, they had forgotten to lock the doors. While the lady hurriedly put on her clothes, Uncle Rick wore a smile. He knew that even though Dad was angry, wasn't going to sell him out. Although Dad kept quiet about what had happened, he made up his mind never to fall prey to Uncle Rick's schemes. It was when Uncle Rick turned 28 that he decided to follow in the footsteps of my father and break away from his parents to establish a business. His parents did give him all the support that he needed, just like they had given to my dad. But while my dad chose to relocate to a small and quiet neighborhood to start his life, Uncle Rick decided to go to the city, and no one was ever really certain the kind of business that he had established. One thing which my dad did know, however, was the fact that Uncle Rick broke away from his parents so he could have the liberty of living the kind of lifestyle that he has always loved, without being reprimanded for it. Even though he seemed to keep in touch with my family, he always seemed secretive about himself. It was during Christmas last year when he visited us and heard Auntie Stacy telling my mom that she wanted the whole of us to come to spend the new year at her place, that he immediately sighed and said that it was exactly what he wanted, telling my parents. My dad wasn't going to fall for his lies, so he immediately told him that we would be accepting his invitation over that of Auntie Stacy. He told Auntie Stacy that she could have us as her guests the following year. Uncle Rick, who never saw my dad's response coming, now knew there was no way he could keep us from his place this time around. We got to his place on New Year's Eve, and my expectant uncle was already waiting to receive us. His place was nice, far better than our home. I couldn't believe that the very uncle who never gave anyone a dime could live in such a beautiful house. When we got in, a beautiful lady was already preparing dinner, and it was at the dining table that Uncle Rick introduced her as his fiancée. You could see the pride in Uncle Rick's voice as he held her from behind while planting a kiss on her chin, a gesture that was meant to show us that she was all his. Dad knew nothing about the women in his brother's life, but I heard him tell Mummy later on that night that he hopes this lady has come to stay. This lady was nice to us throughout our stay there. She made sure that we were comfortable in every way, and the way she carried herself, my parents rightly guessed that she was from a family who belonged to the high class. It was no wonder my uncle was full of pride. She was way out of his league. One thing that seemed to bother my dad, though, was the fact that Uncle Rick could afford the kind of luxury that he enjoyed. He knew that Uncle Rick couldn't have made so much money in a short period of time. Besides, the fact that Uncle Rick always demanded food which he could take back home with him each time he came visiting, easily suggested that he was not financially buoyant. As our time at Uncle Rick's place drew to a close, Dad was forced to ask him about the kind of business he was into, as we hadn't seen him leave the house for work since we came. When Dad finally asked him about it, he just laughed and said it was a discussion for next time. The day of our departure finally arrived, and while we were getting set to leave, we suddenly heard a loud bang on the door. It sounded the second time, and we all rushed out to see what was wrong. When we got there, we saw a lady who was pregnant, demanding to see Uncle Rick. She was already going around the house screaming his name, and when Uncle Rick's girlfriend demanded that this pregnant lady leave her house, a fight immediately ensued. Although this lady was pregnant, she quickly subdued my uncle's girlfriend and almost gave her the beating of her life if not for the timely intervention of my mom and Dad. While they were being separated, this pregnant lady began calling my uncle's girlfriend a husband snatcher who uses her ill-gotten wealth to steal people's husbands. We were all carried away that we failed to realize that Uncle Rick had left the house. It took a while before my parents got both parties to calm down. That was when the pregnant lady revealed that she had fed and accommodated Uncle Rick, who had promised her marriage for 2 years. Within those 2 years, Uncle Rick always found it difficult getting a job, but he never found it difficult getting drunk and bringing ladies into her own house. She had put up with it because she loved him and they would soon get married. But he recently moved out of the house after she got pregnant. She tried all her best to reach him, but he just kept on avoiding her. The pregnant lady had barely finished speaking when Uncle Rick's girlfriend broke down and started shedding tears. She claimed that she never knew Uncle Rick was engaged to be married. She said she met him about 6 months ago and he proposed to her a day after Christmas. It was after she said yes to him that she asked him to move in with her. I watched from my corner as Uncle Rick's girlfriend, who was visibly broken, said she couldn't bear the shame of telling her parents and everyone that her fiancé was expecting a child from someone else. We all felt bad for these ladies. It was now clear to my parents that the only reason Uncle Rick may have proposed to this lady was so he could move in with her and get us to believe everything we saw was his. My dad had his question answered. Uncle Rick was jobless and he lived off of hardworking women. I don't really know what Dad and Mom may have said to those ladies, but it was clear that the situation was far from settled, as Uncle Rick was nowhere to be seen. We returned back to our small neighborhood that day, and I knew that I never wanted a holiday like that. No one had from Uncle Rick for a while, and every attempt to reach him proved abortive. However, news soon came from my grandparents, who called Dad to inform him that Uncle Rick suddenly returned home looking haggard. He came back pay-handed, and so it was clear he didn't have a means of livelihood. His parents wondered at what happened to the money he was given, and all the claims of establishing a business. When my dad was informed about his brother's whereabouts, he decided to go visit his parents to inform them of the pitiable situation in which Uncle Rick had put 2 innocent ladies. He began making arrangements to travel down with my mom, but because my school had not yet resumed, they deliberated on taking me along or sending me over to Auntie Stacy's place to stay for the few days that they would be gone. I was very excited at the idea of staying with Auntie Stacy. I knew that it was going to be the best time of my life. Auntie Stacy always treated me like a daughter, and even though she had promised to take me with her when her next holiday arrived, I knew that she would be as glad as I did to have me come over to her place. My excitement soon came to an end when it was decided that I would be going with them to visit my grandparents. They had only seen me a few months after I was born, and since I didn't really know them, my parents saw this as an opportunity for a reunion. When I tried convincing them to send me over to Auntie Stacy's place, they said that she had resumed work and I would simply be a burden to her, and besides, we would all be going to her place during the next holiday. When we got to my grandparents' home, I was fascinated by what I saw. Although I knew that they were farmers, I never expected them to be much more organized than my parents. I had never seen such a level of mechanized farming in the whole of our neighborhood. They had a large expanse of farmland that was more than half the size of our neighborhood. There was a section for livestock, and they had people assigned to each section. As a result of my background, I never thought that my father could have an inheritance, how much more, an inheritance of this magnitude. My grandparents immediately fell in love with me. Most of their workers who had been around for long came to greet my dad, and I heard them say that they hoped he was back to stay. While all that was going on, My eyes spotted my uncle who was passing glances at a lady who looked like a worker. My mind quickly drifted to the reason why we actually came. Dad had promised the lady who was pregnant for Uncle Rick that he would help get in touch with his brother and ensure he takes responsibility for the child once it's born. It was after dinner that my parents and grandparents began discussing. I overheard Dad telling them that Uncle Rick only returned home to avoid the problem that he had created for himself. Dad rehearsed the incident that took place between both ladies, and I could hear my grandpa sigh in disappointment. Even though it was a custom for Uncle Rick to embarrass the family, he just seemed to be getting worse by the day. A few days after he came home, Grandpa overheard him telling a lady that he was the heir to all of the farm and he would make her his wife if only she slept with him. The lady was quickly sent away. By morning, my grandparents gathered my mom and dad, and Uncle Rick together. Granddad asked Uncle Rick if the news of him impregnating a lady was true, and he quickly attested to it. When asked what he intended doing about the lady and her unborn child, Uncle Rick simply said that he wasn't ready for marriage, neither was he ready to be a father, but that he would use his own share of inheritance to take care of the mother and child, and ensure that they lived a comfortable life. At this point, Grandma broke down and started crying as she called her son a good-for-nothing moron. I watched from a distance as my mom quickly rushed to console her. Uncle Rick didn't seem the least disturbed. He was indeed a moron. It was agreed that the pregnant lady who had lost her job would be brought to live with Uncle Rick and his parents until she delivers her baby, after which she would be given some capital to go back and start up a business that would take care of her and the child. We were getting ready to leave that morning when Granddad called in the family lawyer. He asked that we didn't leave yet until he was done with his lawyer. After a lengthy session with the lawyer, he finally gathered his family to him. This time around, I was equally called in. Granddad began by thanking everyone for being by his side all these years. He then started praising his wife, who had always pushed him to keep going further even when there was little progress in sight. I could see the gratitude in his eyes as he says that if he had another life, he would choose to spend it with her over and over again. He then proceeded to thank my dad for putting in his best in the past to ensure that the family business was thriving. When he got to Uncle Rick's turn, what seemed like a vote of thanks turned to a note of regret. He started recounting all the privileges which were given to Uncle Rick and how he took them for granted. He spoke about how Uncle Rick would always team up with some workers behind his back to sell some of the produce, only to lavish them on women, and even though Granddad knew all along, he allowed him to have his way because he thought it would finally make him committed to the family business. He went further to remind Uncle Rick in the presence of everyone present of how he had almost used the farmland as a surety when he wanted to gamble. I listened as Granddad spoke with hurt about how Uncle Rick took a huge loan from the bank, in the name of the family, only to squander it on the gambling table, and Granddad had to repay the loan when the banks came calling. He spoke about the huge sum of the money they had given Uncle Rick when he said he wanted to establish a business in the city, only to end up getting a lady pregnant, and almost ruining the life of another. What was most painful at this point was the fact that Uncle Rick didn't seem to show any sign of remorse. He just wore a look that clearly said that he didn't care. Grandpa now got to the main reason why he had gathered us. He told us that he had just rewritten his will, and he wanted us to equally hear it from him. He then proceeded to say that all of the family's properties, investment, and even the farm had been willed to my dad. My dad was to relocate with his family from the small neighborhood where we lived into the family house, and he was to take over the reins of leadership from Granddad immediately. Granddad said he and his wife were retiring from the business. They would sit back and enjoy the rest of their years in peace and comfort. He then stated that from henceforth, Uncle Rick was to move out of the house, and if he wished to still live there, he would only live as a worker. He would live with the other workers and he would be paid the same amount as the other workers are paid. The inheritance that Uncle Rick had long anticipated was now taken from him. Worse still was the fact that the privileges that he once enjoyed as a son would be taken away from him, as he was now faced with the only option of being a worker who would have to work like everyone else just to survive. Uncle Rick was stunned. He looked like he had just been hit by a rock. He initially thought that it was a joke, until Granddad immediately issued a disclaimer to the public, stating that Uncle Rick no longer had any rights to negotiate on any business on behalf of the family. On our way back to our neighborhood, I watched as Mom told Auntie Stacy over the phone about how our fortune had immediately turned. Auntie Stacy was elated. She was really pleased with the way Granddad handled the situation. She had never really been a fan of Uncle Rick, and since she had once fallen victim to a man, she detested men who took advantage of women. Although she was glad Uncle Rick got served what he deserved, she was even happier for her sister who had chosen to love a man, even when she initially didn't know that he had an inheritance of such magnitude. News quickly spread around the small community about what had happened, and it was clear that everyone was going to miss us. On the day when we were about to leave the community, everyone gathered to say goodbye, and although I was certain that I would be more comfortable in any grandparents' place, I soon found myself shedding tears. I was leaving the place where I had lived my whole life. All I had learned in life, the friends I had made, were all in this neighborhood, and even though I was saying goodbye, I knew I would carry with me lots of memories that I would cherish. We got back to my grandparents' place and we easily began settling in. Uncle Rick had run away because he couldn't stand the shame and ridicule, but Granddad knew that he would be back sooner than expected. Meanwhile, I was told to move into the room that once belonged to him. Everyone was very friendly to my mom and me, as my dad already had a good reputation among most of them. But Dad was not going to let me become lazy simply because I now had better privileges. Dad made it clear to me that I would be working just the same way I did when we lived in the neighborhood. It didn't really bother me because the way the farming system was organized here seemed to really fascinate me, and so I wouldn't mind spending time on the farm after school, just to see what more was in stock. This would really keep me engaged while I waited for Christmas Day. Hey guys, would you still work on the farm if you had this new privilege of mine, or would you spend it doing other things? I would love to know your thoughts on this.
Thanksgiving Day. Hi, I'm Juliet. Today is Thanksgiving Day, but everybody is moody. We are all seated around the dining table, with no one taking the initiative to eat. Mr. Givenchy, the father of the twins, was asked to give us a top, but he instead went out to receive a mysterious call. Fred's head was on the dining table. Jake was not even seated in the dining. He was watching a drama series in the living room. The twins, Mya and Mia, were in disagreement for the first that I knew about. Nobody seems to be in the Thanksgiving mood. My parents, the Bradley, tried to lighten up the atmosphere, but no one seemed interested, especially when my dad started with his weird jokes. My mom was forced to ask him to keep shut. I was starving from the day's work, but I could not eat as well. I'm scared of the people would say. I work at the grocery store some miles away from home. I am trying to raise some money to help my parents since I will be going to college soon. I drop by at the grocery store every working day to take the afternoon shift. My boss, Mr. Durant, is a lovely old man. He is old enough to be my grandfather, but he owns a store. I don't think he is selling for profit. So far, so good. I have been an honest girl, and Mr. Durant had been a loyal boss. You're a good girl, he said a few months ago. He told me about how his previous employees had stolen his goods and money. That justified why he was reluctant when I came with my application letter. He was blunt. I don't need another employee, he said. I was persuasive because I needed the job, and too. After all, Mr. Durant needed help. I never knew he had diabetes until my second month into the job when I saw him jabbing himself with insulin at the thigh. I got the job at his place because I always rewrite the same application letter and drop it in his mailbox every day. He must have been tired of tearing papers. I should have considered other options, but I knew older adults are the nicest, and they don't like sacking young girls like myself. After a while, I saw a message from Mr. Durant, and he wanted me to come for an interview tomorrow afternoon. I branched at his place after school the following day, and there was no interview per se. Mr. Durant just took me around the store, and he told me where I could find the goods and showed me the restroom and other stuff. The store was quite more extensive than I thought. After introducing me to the store, he gave me a t-shirt. With Durant's Need Store written on it, he gave me an employee's badge with my name already inscribed. Welcome to Durant's place, he said and shook my hands. Everything was faster than I had thought. I was happy I got myself the job. I needed it so much, and now I was sure finances might not be a limiting factor when my admission came. I thanked Mr. Durant. He asked me to call him Joe now. Thank you, Mr. Durant, I replied. He smiled and said, well done. He gave me some laid-down rules. There were no rules, to be candid. He just wanted to make it as official as possible. Some of what he said was that nothing must miss unless they're stolen. I should show up as early as possible and leave by 9 p.m. I was okay with everything he said. Mr. Durant doesn't have to leave the store, and his home is just behind the store. There is this door at the end of the store. I had never entered his place, and I have no reason to because Mr. Durant spends almost the whole day in the store. He only goes into the bath and changes his clothes. After working with Mr. Durant for a month, he awarded me the Employee of the Month. Who else will he give it to? I am the only one that works there. After awarding me, he let me know that I was the only person he had presented with the award. He had never awarded any other person, not once. My diligence convinced him. I was proud of myself. After working at Mr. Durant's, I found out that it wasn't as easy as I had believed it to be. A sales rep in a store at the center of the town is as busy as a bank in the city. I got tired after every day. I wonder how Mr. Durant had been coping. Even with the stress, I have been punctual to date. I gave it all my best because I didn't want to lose the job, and more so, I received tips from the customer. Some made mention that I am pretty faster in responding to them compared with Mr. Durant. You can't blame the older man, and it is normal for him to be slow at that age. I was the best help Mr. Durant could get. From then, he had been rewarding me with the award to date. It is not a big deal, and I had a cartoon full of the awards at home. There is no place to hang them anymore in my room. I am tired of the award now, and I had already lost count. He cooked for himself and me most of the time. I don't take supper at home anymore because I would have eaten at Mr. Durant's until this night, the night of Thanksgiving. Mr. Durant had traveled to his son's place the day before and left me in charge since we were now on holiday. I was reluctant to go home because something had happened, and home wasn't as fun as it was when my mom's younger sister, her husband, and the twins had come to spend the holiday with us. Jake and Fred, my younger brothers, were not the best hosts. Mr. Durant's store is the perfect excuse for me not to go home until late in the night. Once I got home, I said my greetings and straight to my room. That had been the norm until this night.
I am regretting coming home already, and I should have gone to Hope's place.
Hope is my one and only friend. Her place is just 3 houses away from Durant's Need store. She visited the store often, even before I became Mr. Durant's employee. Now that I work there, it gives her more reason to come. She does come to help me with sales and keep my company at the same time. The effort potentiates my productivity. For more reason, Mr. Durant is fond of me. I usually go to her place to do my assignment and science project before heading home. But that wasn't the case tonight. I just wanted to go home and eat. I was so hungry. I would have gotten myself a box of cereals and milk if not for The mom said, "Today, we eat together like a big family." My dad is not a fan of association, but I don't know what my mom had fed him that night. He was so optimistic about eating together. I knew for sure, and this dinner was to solve the taboo the family just found out. I wasn't aware of what had happened, and I wanted to eat. Is that hard to ask for? Jake, who was the youngest, is the weird one in the house. I don't understand how he pretended nothing was happening in the house. He wasn't interested in the family dinner, and nobody could convince him into it, not even Dad. Sometimes, I love to be like him, but I am not just capable of doing such things, maybe because I am feminine. That night, I was holding the fork but couldn't touch my pie since Mr. Givenchy had found himself a reason to leave us at the table. I need something to make me leave the table. I was not involved in the mess, and I still wonder why my stomach had to suffer for it. I looked at Jake, whose head was still on the table. The boy would love to disappear. At the same time, I was in the kitchen with Mom when I went to get myself a box of cereals before she stopped me. She told me that Jake had not left him since morning. I was sorry for him because he was my younger brother. I tried advising him about his attitude with women in the past, but he always says he knows what he is doing. Now, he understands he doesn't know anything, and he has no idea. My pity for him soon changed to anger because he is the reason why I can't eat this night, and can't leave the table in my room and do something else before I sleep off. Thanksgiving night soon became a confusing night at our place. Thanksgiving night in my house is not the day to give thanks. I had longed for this night, and this is the only day I get to eat pumpkin pie. I like pumpkin pie, and it is my favorite. I had made plans with Mum on how the pie must look. Pie looks like I had planned with Mum, but I might not eat it. Mrs. Givenchy, my mom's sister, is absent-minded. For sure, she's seated, but you can quickly tell she's not with us. It is embarrassing for her. She had lost her face, her daughters had embarrassed her, and Mr. Givenchy is not understanding. Why did this have to happen? It concerns me, but right now, I want to fill my stomach. This is a fundamental cause for the family, but I can think of the pumpkin pie that I can't eat in front of me. Mia and MY were the most confused individuals in the room. They had lost their face. The two are sitting at my two sides, but I am avoiding looking at their face. I feel uncomfortable. They are my longed-for cousins, and now we have met, but we can't enjoy the time. I know we might not see again. Mr. Givenchy will do everything to stop them from coming. They won't want to come even if they are permitted to do so. This family is messed up already. Jake and I are the two with no compromised personalities among the family members. Jake is not concerned about the whole event, but I want to eat. My dad was cracking some stupid jokes before my mum shut him up. Now, he just placed his head in his palm. My dad is not the quiet one, but now he is as quiet as the graveyard. No one made a noise. Our dinner had not been this silent until today. I didn't know what had happened, and Mum didn't say much. But Jake hinted to me about the uproar while I was busy working at Durant's place. How I wish he didn't update me. I would have lackadaisically eaten the meal. Before anyone could stop me from eating, I would have gulped a few slices. But now my hunger is mixed with emotions. Jake was not emotional at all, and the guy was enjoying his time. He has always been the bad boy of the house, but today it is his time to prove that there is a worse. How I wish I should just stay in the store, sleep there perhaps. While at the dining table, my mind went back to the event at the store earlier today. A customer came to buy a couple of goods. He took some extra stuff and tucked them in his jacket's pocket. He got to the counter and placed all the goods in the cart on the table. I gave him the price for the goods, then I asked him for the rest. "Your money is $60, sir. Will you be paying for the rest of the goods?" I asked, "Which other goods are you talking about?" He laughed in return. I replied calmly, "The ones in your jacket's pocket. I can help you get them out if you don't mind, and I will love it if you respect yourself, sir," I said, calmly proud of myself. The people in the queue had started looking at the man with a funny face. "Oh," he said, "I had almost forgotten," he said as he brought out the stuff. The people in the queue applauded my sharpness. Little did they know that there were CCTVs at every store corner. I grinned at their ignorance. Mr. Durant will be proud of me for that. More than that, I am proud of myself. "Juliet," a voice snapped me out from the only thing I had enjoyed since I had gotten home. "Why are you smiling?" Mrs. Givenchy asked. "Who is the boy?" she asked again. "Which boy?" I responded, quite shocked with the questions. "The boy you're thinking of that is making you smile," she replied. "You are old enough to have a boyfriend, so don't be ashamed," she continued. "So, your two daughters are also old enough to screw one guy." I said to myself, that would have been a very nasty thing to say, and my mom won't be pleased with that. I responded to her views by just smiling. She smiled back. "Just a call from hope where Mr. Durant will be appreciated at this point in time." I don't know how to cook a lie. My mom knows I don't have any science projects to do since I had finished them 2 weeks ago. I should have gone camping. I didn't go because Hope said it would be boring. She said the last year's camp she attended was nothing to write home about. It was a total waste of her time. I should have gone anyways because Mr. Durant said he did not mind giving me the 2 weeks off, but considering Hope's experience, I changed my mind. Now, I am stuck in a Thanksgiving drama, and I am forced to play a significant role. While I was lost in my thought, Mr. Givenchy had finally returned from receiving his call. "That was my boss," he said. "To be precise, our company is planning to have a branch somewhere in Africa, Nigeria. And I will be heading the project," he rejoined. That was a piece of good news, but it wasn't enough to clear the cloud at the dining table. My dad congratulates him and wishes him the best of luck, and I do so myself. His wife pecked him. Leah, MYA, and Fred can't even say a thing. It was apparent the twins are happy for their dad's achievement but could not say a thing because of their current position on things, while my little brother still has his head on the table. I haven't seen his face since I got home. He has been in that position forever. Is he crying, or he is just ashamed? Pumpkin pie is not really his thing. That is, there are a few bowls of noodles on the table. He can't eat them anymore, too, because they would have been cold. Oh, that reminds me what time it is. I raised my head up to check the wall clock hanging on the wall towards the living room. I can't believe my eyes. It is just 10 minutes to 10. So, I have been at this table for just 20 minutes. It looked like 3 hours to me already. Why is the time so slow? How can I get myself away from the mess I am finding myself in? I looked at Jake. He seems to be enjoying himself. His eyes are glued to the TV, and sometimes he presses his phone. I would have loved to press my phone now, too, only that Mom said, no phone at the dining. I sighed. Everybody looked in my direction, but no one said a thing. It is normal to sigh at this moment. That has been the most common means of communication since I got back from work. The only person found laughing is Jake, and no one can tell him to stop. Not even Dad. He is on a league of his own. He had been the different one among us since he was little. He has no regard for Fred and me until recently. He fought a lot at school and does not care about the principal reports of him. He loves to be alone. You can't enter his rooms unless you get his knocking code right, not even Dad. Mom is the only one left out of that criterion. He loves his privacy. He feels like he does not really fit in with the family, and that everyone does not really like him. I will look like that if you're always the subject at every family meeting. He is used to being left alone, and today, no one can force him to join the awkward family moment. I never wished to be in his shoes for once, but today I would have appreciated it. The pumpkin pie is cold, the bowl of noodles is cold, and Mr. Givenchy is still yet to say his remark on Thanksgiving Day. Fred is still yet to raise his head, and my mom and her sister are ready to clear the table. No Thanksgiving right on Thanksgiving night, I said to myself. I should have bought a few burritos before heading home. I didn't because I am saving for college. No, here I am, no food nor happiness on a Thanksgiving night because my aunt, her husband, and the twins came visiting. This is the worst Thanksgiving ever, and all blame to the twins and Fred. I am not involved in this mess, and I don't want to. I don't even know how it started, although Fred hinted to me about the progress. I warned him, but he neglected my warning because he wanted to satisfy his urge. Urge satisfied, mess showed up. What a night, isn't it? Hope had said she would call me. I am here expecting her call, but maybe the girl is enjoying herself, or the babe had slept off. The girl can sleep a lot. When we were in elementary school, we were asked to say our hobby. I remembered saying mine was playing video games. I am no more a fan of video games. But my friend said her hobby is sleeping. Every other kid laughed at her. She was really ashamed of herself. But before the day ended, my friend still slept in class. That is my hope for you. Ah still enjoys sleeping to date. Maybe that is why I am her only friend. We both don't have the luxury of time to share. We are a perfect fit for each other. She sleeps a lot, I work a lot. I helped my mom and her sister clean up. Since no one was eating and really cared about the food, I took some slices. And I headed straight to my room, leaving my mom and her sister to wash the dishes. With what happened, I expected my mom and her sister to resolve it with a big argument, but it seems nothing can come in between the two sisters. Good for them, unlike my siblings, a small toy can be a good reason for them to exchange blows. My dad and Mr. Givenchy are outside talking like a man to man. I am in my room upstairs, looking at them below. I was checking on them to avoid all kinds of havoc. If their men's talk turns to punch exchange, I can quickly call upon their wives to resolve it. Now, I have all the time for myself. I have the piece of pumpkin pie I had been craving, and I can now chat with my phone. I opened my phone, and I saw 2 messages from Hope. What? I didn't notice the notification sound. Oh, my phone is still silent. It is late already, and I can't go out anymore. I enjoyed the pumpkin pie. I need to get myself a cup of fruit juice. I went downstairs to the kitchen. I got myself the juice. Mom and her sister are still enjoying each other's company. Fred is now in the living room with his phone. I guessed he is working on his video blog. Jake is still busy with the drama series that will end in less than an hour. Mia and MYA are reading a book. Everyone seems to be minding their business. Jake saw me and came close to me. He sipped part of the juice and followed me to my room. This is funny, Jake has never entered my room, and neither had I entered him since his 10th birthday. It has been 5 years since then, and now he wanted to enter my room. Of course, he's always welcome. He's my little brother. We entered the room, and he asked me, "Are you interested in knowing what happened?" He asked, "Haven't you told me already?" I responded, "You really need to know some parts," he said as if he was about to tell me a mystery about the ancient world. This is what had caused the moody Thanksgiving celebration at the dining table earlier this night. Fred is just 17, though, although he is just 11 months younger than me. We are kind of close, but not one of us is close with Jake, who does things differently. Fred opened up quickly to me until when puberty started setting in, we got ashamed of sharing some physiological changes with one another. I got closer to Mom since she is of the same gender as me while he found comfort in the arms of Dad. I started experiencing puberty changes before he did. We first noticed my sudden increase in the breast. Before I didn't mind wearing panties with Fred around, then I stopped. I told my mom that it is normal for me to experience such change. She said I am becoming a woman. I don't want to become a woman, I usually tell myself then. Then a few weeks after, Minert showed up. Then, I needed to start using the pad and the likes. Fred was in my room when he had his first wet dreams. Had he been fantasizing about me? That increased our distance. We soon saw those changes as usual, and we reunited. Fred respected my privacy, but he didn't care about his. To date, he is the only person that opens his door. You don't have to knock before entering. He is a simple boy, to be honest. As Fred grew, his urge increased. He started experimenting with different things. He started clearing his web history for no reason in particular. I wanted to ask him about that, but I later found out that he had been doing the guy's thing. That wasn't enough. He started getting laid. Although he hasn't brought any girl home yet, I noticed his game with other girls since we are in the same class. And Hope once told me that Fred had approached her, but she declined because of our friendship. Hope has been a good friend. She is the most decent girl in the class. I am not as decent as I look, but I draw lines. I believe Fred has had enough of the schoolgirls. He is still a cool-headed boy. I think that is what the girls fall for. Nobody really shares his stories at school. All he has done are in secret. Sometimes, he told me about some of his fish. Fred started venturing into online sexing and sex chatting. He met several ladies, younger or older, that are not interested in a serious relationship like him. They just want to get laid until their classmates expect a relationship. While on his course The Web Dating, he met a girl with 2 personalities. He told me about the strange girl that can be naughty today and calm tomorrow. I told him to step out of that relationship, that the lady might be playing with his feelings. Do I look like I have any feelings? He would ask. That's true, you can be getting laid every week with your feelings attached. He just satisfied his unsatisfiable urge. He told me that what really attached him to that lady was that she looked like my doppelganger. I checked for myself and realized the lady looked like me. He traveled to meet the lady, and he got laid, mission completed. But this time, he wanted to get more. That was when it became real. This time the lady wasn't talking naughty as the first time, and he didn't really enjoy it. He told me everything. I could say that the lady might not be in the mood since I am not experienced. This morning, my mom told us that his sister and her family would be coming to celebrate Thanksgiving with us. I had seen the sister but had never seen her husband and the twins. We were all anticipating the coming of our cousins. I left for Mr. Durant's store for the day's job while my brothers helped arrange the house for the comfort of our guests. I closed the store by 9:09 p.m. sharp and took a taxi home rather than trekking as I am used to. I got home. My mom was moody yet preparing for the feast. The house was unnecessarily quiet. Then, Jake just me that the girl Fred had been meeting recently is twins and they are our cousins. How can this be resolved? How did they find out? Do you know how?
How I milked my neighbor's goat in 10 minutes. Hi guys, I am KH Low, and if you ever met anyone crazier than it was I consider myself fun to be with it. You can actually get crazy with me. I would take up adventures simply because it was just an adventure. For reasons which I can't properly understand, I have always had a level of curiosity you don't get to see in most people you meet on a daily. Some say curiosity killed the cat. Well, for KH Low, curiously was her life wire. The very thing that kept her going. My curiosity always gave me something new to focus on and a direction in which I could channel my energy. I would swim through land or walk on water just to find answers about certain things that puzzled me, and trust me, I always had questions. My head seems to always question the reason why things were the way they were. The cause and effect of certain actions taken. This has made me learn by experience 1,000 ways things don't work. For instance, one time while I was just 3 years old, I got surprised when I closely observed that a newly wedded couple that was our next-door neighbor. I could tell her stomach of the wife was increasingly getting bigger than Mummy's own. This gave me quite a great bit of concern because Mummy was older than her and by default should have the bigger stomach. While I was still trying to put pieces together, I discovered that the size was no more as big as it was, but she now carried a child smaller than myself. I couldn't help it anymore, and so I walked up to Mummy, who seemed rather happy. This woman was beating her to the belly race. "Mummy, from where did she get the baby?" I inquired. "She got it from within her," Mummy said. "Who put it within her?" I further asked. "Well, she has always had it within her, she just decided to bring it out now," Mummy replied, cleverly avoiding details that were not fit for a 5-year-old. I wasn't satisfied, and it was no new knowledge that I won't leave until my curiosity had been satisfied and my questions answered. How did she bring it out? Does she still have any more left in her? While Mummy was still figuring out a way of escape, I gave the final blow. Can you bring out a baby for me now? At this point, a dad who was amused and thrilled altogether by the uncommon intelligence displayed by me just like other times burst out laughing as he picked me up from the ground. Yes, when Mummy is ready, she will bring out one, he said while passing her a naughty glance. Though my curiosity was still not satisfied yet, I had the promise of a baby which I eagerly now looked forward to, and so I let the sleeping dog lie. Children have a knack for imitating what they see others do. Well, KH Lowe was not your regular kid. If I wasn't imitating what I had seen, I was initiating what I had imagined. This lesson my parents learned very early, and so while great caution was taken when doing certain things while I was around, they equally paid close attention when I was on my own because I was always up to something. Fast forward to a year later and I had my 4th birthday party being celebrated. It was usually fun, and this time was no different. The colorful event had neighbors, friends, and well-wishers come over. While they sang the traditional happy birthday song, my eyes were fixed on the 4 lit candles which I was expected to blow out. And as you will rightly guess, I had questions. One of the reasons you would want to avoid my questions is because I usually paid attention to details others might pass on as insignificant. I won't say that I have a photographic memory, but I clearly remember that during last year's birthday celebration, I had just 3 wax candles to blow out. But now they were 4. One thing I find fascinating is the fact that I was never allowed to eat them. What in the world were candles doing on a cake when you are not allowed to eat them? Did they make the cake sweeter? Why were they now 4? I could have gone on a quest to get answers from Mummy and Daddy almost immediately. But it was my birthday party and they were all over the place, and I won't get the attention I needed. If I was going to get answers, I would have to find them myself, and so I began to hatch a plan. The taste of the pudding has got to be in the eating, so if you ever come around and get served something nice with candles in it, the whole credit shouldn't be given to Mum because your baby girl equally paid the cooking pot a visit. Standing in front of the mirror, I had never been more proud and excited. The holidays were over and today was resumption day. Mum and Dad would finally heave temporal sighs of relief as I'll be away from home for a few hours. I was already 16 and from all indications, I got wilder and more inquisitive with age. Mom had finally fulfilled the promise of bringing out a baby 2 times over. Keeping up with my siblings was not really going to be a difficult task. No, they already dealt with KH Lowe. Unlike me, my 2 siblings were just regular kids who were only intrigued by things they saw but lost interest immediately they saw something else. Yeah, they were easily distracted, but it was going to be easy keeping them on a leash. I was quite popular in school. I don't really know how I do it, but it just seemed real easy making my presence felt. One way or another, KH Lowe would always happen. I had no issues making friends. If you could get crazy, then we could be besties. Teachers knew me for me. Quite a few had noted that they were always glad when rounding up a lesson. I asked questions that kept them on their toes. Don't get me wrong, even though my questions could seem and sound naughty, they didn't stem from a motive to cause mischief but from a desire to learn. If I have already painted the picture of a girl who always came out of every adventure decked in glory, then please accept my apology. Curiosity, like most things, has got its pros and cons, and for a girl who was always on the go, I got into some kind of trouble every now and then. Most times, they were life-threatening, and other times, they just simply created foes. I have had to be rescued from a fire incident started by me. A friend had to be rushed to the emergency room, all because she joined me in an expedition that didn't really come out as planned. In a church, at a party, in school, and everywhere KH Lowe has been, I have had an unfair share of being criticized more than celebrated. Whenever KH Lowe happened, it was really easy to see me as a kid without a proper home upbringing who was sore on the skin of everyone, especially her parents, but if I pull off a stunt that ends well. My parents were considered fortunate to have me in the family. We have had visitors come to our home at odd times. Some came to plead with my parents to keep me far from their children, others came to issue warnings to me right in front of my parents. Well, it never really bothered me the least bit. I always try to be KH Lowe, and there are times it's synonymous with danger and destruction or glory and fame. So when next you seem to envy me, just remember that there are always 2 sides to a coin. Like every other student, I did have certain subjects that easily appealed to me. One of which was biology. Each topic just gave me so many avenues for adventure. So now you can understand my excitement when the first teacher to step into the class was the biology teacher. She immediately had my attention when she announced that we were going to study the reproductive system of animals. No sooner had she said so did I find myself walking the part of a pleasurable memory lane. It all started at the end of last semester when our final topic was the human reproductive system and reproduction. I had listened with rapt attention as she explained the steps involved taken before reproduction can occur. This was really a bad time to become KH low, but it was too late. I'm always KH low. I then realized I was just like Mom and the neighbor, I equally had babies in me. Now it wouldn't hurt to bring out one, would it? Of course, now I know that it takes two to tango. I needed someone willing to tango. The holidays were around the corner and I didn't know if I could utilize it. A 3-day visit to Granny was all the opportunity I would get. It was actually a tradition for us to pay Granny a visit every end of the year. There we had our Thanksgiving as a family. We got to know some cousins who we'll never think about once we left. Grandma was not Granny in every sense of the word. She was a 75-year-old woman who still had the strength of a 50-year-old, and had always been an ardent advocate of morality and discipline. Arrangements were made when she turned 65 to get someone to assist her. But she vehemently opposed it. She hated to think of herself as being so vulnerable she would need a helper. A blow from arthritis at age 70 had her reconsidering her stance. This was when Dave was introduced into the scene. A grumpy 12-year-old who just sat around waiting for instructions. Not much is known about Dave's past except that he was the 5th child of a woman who had 6 children for different men. His mom lived a promiscuous life, and she took in for several men who either denied being responsible for the pregnancy or abandoned her to raise the kids alone, as some of them were already married with kids. This further led her into prostitution as a means of livelihood. She learned by experience that being a single mom barely had any advantage, as she was now plagued with a level of poverty so intense that the kids were neglected. When it became apparent that the income she generated through her trade was not going to be enough for her and the kids, she decided to initiate those old enough into one vice or the other. For the 2 girls who just became teens, she would often send them to spend the night with various men, and they would return with the proceeds by daybreak. They were quickly exposed to the lifestyle of sex and drugs. The boys were not spared either. Once they were old enough to run, she sent them out to the streets to go pickpocketing. The home quickly became an abode for criminals. While Dave turned 3 years, his mom sexually contracted a deadly disease and passed away. Now being orphaned at an early age, he was sent into the orphanage home pending when foster parents were willing to adopt him. Although the kind of lifestyle Dave experienced in his home was not really present at the orphanage was no kinder to him. The matrons placed over the children always diverted the funds and foodstuffs donated by well-meaning individuals and firms, and this caused the children to be malnourished and neglected to a great extent. The kids soon got used to the lifestyle of survival of the fittest. Bullying was a constant feature in the house, and it was no news when you heard that a kid had run away from the home. If brought back to the orphanage, the kid was made to face severe punishments just to make sure he never repeated the act. Dave ran away twice. The first time was when he was 7 years of age, and the second time was when he was about clocking 12 in 3 days. It was while my dad was at the orphanage making inquiries about the adoption process that he saw Dave being led back into the home. The look on the faces of other children suggested that Dave was in for a treatment he knew too well. There was just something about the whole scene that Daddy could relate to. Upon further inquiry about Dave, he saw so much of himself in Dave that he decided that he, Dave, fit the profile of the individual Grandma needed around. Of course, Dave would need to have some work done on him, but Dad was convinced Grandma was well suited to handle Dave. After all, she did a good job on him years back. And Dave was really no different. He was just going through the same things Dad experienced years ago. My dad was the first of 3 children, all from the same couple. He was the product of pure love between 2 couples. Unlike Dave, he knew his father and had the temporal privilege of enjoying a father's love. He was full of life until his father lost his life in a ghastly motor accident. At the age of 6, he had become fatherless. His mom tried all she could to fill up the space created by her husband. She took up multiple jobs and even turned down a couple of suitors who had proposed marriage because she felt that they might not totally love her kids. The demands of her jobs occasionally made her unavoidably absent from the life of her kids, and this began to affect them negatively. Dad soon becomes an object of ridicule in class. He was not spared the torments of bullies, and this further caused a decline in his grade. He gradually became a recluse, cutting off from the rest of the world when he still had a lot to offer. The kid who was once full of energy and positivity now battled with low self-esteem. He saw himself amounting to nothing and thought that he would die soon. A thought that he saw as a relief since it would put an end to his misery. Grandma often came home late at night and was always too tired to check up on how the day went for the kids. So it took a while before she noticed the mess she had made. She immediately began making adjustments by cutting down her work hours, visiting the kids in school twice a week, and spending more time with them at home. As soon as Dad started getting the reassurance of his mother's love, he began standing up to the bullies in school because he knew his mom would show up to his defense as she once did when she confronted a bully who regularly picked up on Dad. She reported the matter to the school authorities and the boy was suspended for a while. As time went by, Grandma rebuilt his confidence and self-esteem. She made him always seek something positive in any negative circumstance. Thanks to Grandma's resilience, Dad turned out great, and he knew she could do the same for Dave. Making our way to the front porch of Granny's house, we were greeted by the now 17-year-old Dave who, although was far from being a fine gentleman, was now so full of life. It was no surprise. Grandma's recipe had worked just as Mom and Dad said it would. It always worked. It worked on Dad and it helped shape him into a man very conscious of how limited time is. Although Dave was so eager to please everyone, it was the night before we left that I paid attention to him. I was actually keeping him at arm's length because there was really nothing about him that appealed to me. The house was finally crowned as uncles came with their families. This time you're alone, we had 5 babies added to the family. The rooms were filled up and the kids were made to share the same room with Dave. Deep into the night, you could hear the little babies crying in the other room, and while it kept me from falling asleep, everyone else had dozed off, or so I thought. The babies reminded me of the reproduction lessons we had had and my desire to explore. While I tried taking my mind off it, Dave sleepily crossed his hand over me, laying it on my belly. I made to brush his hand aside, but that became my undoing as it grazed the tip of my breasts. That sent a sweet tingling sensation running down my body, and I had to now move my body in a rhythmic fashion to ensure a repetition of body contact. Before long, I felt something rock hard poking and rubbing me. In no time I found myself guiding his hands down a warm, moist, and slippery path which felt so good. I then wondered why my teacher skipped the part where you find yourself on the moon. A shout from Grandma was what it took to end a journey that had barely begun. She had fallen down while making her way to the restroom. We were all surrounding her in no time, and she had to be rushed to the clinic where she was admitted for the night, and Mom and Dave had to stay with her. By morning, she was declared all right but advised to rest a lot. Dad picked up Mom, Grandma, and Dave from the clinic before taking us back home. I was really frustrated as I had some unfinished business. Standing on the porch and waving goodbye as Daddy drove off was Dave, who I was certain couldn't wait for the next Thanksgiving. I may not have completed this expedition, but it gave me a renewed passion to seize the opportunity when next it came. Wherever it came, back to the classroom, the lesson was delivered as expected. We specifically learned about the reproduction of a goat and how it breastfed its kid. The whole class was almost thrown into a frenzy at some point when the teacher mentioned that a kid wasn't the only one who took goat milk. Humans equally did. You could literally see the look of disgust on our faces. It was very difficult putting the pieces together. If we took the same milk the goats did, can we be called goats? Why don't we have the same horn they had? Why don't we walk on all fours just as they did? Why don't we bleat the same way they did? Can we eat the grass they ate and still stay healthy? The teacher very well knew that he had some questions to answer, but he wanted to keep us anticipating the next class, so he decided not to take questions today. I've never had the patience to wait for an answer. You either give it to me now or I get it now. I wasn't going to let this pass, and you could bet on it. I needed to know if I belonged to the family of goats. Immediately I got home, I headed straight for my laptop. It was one of the tools which aided me in fact findings. I started surfing the web looking for goats and answers. After a few minutes, it became clear. Humans actually consume goat milk, but it passed through processes that made it safe for us. Wow, I was glad I wasn't a goat. Curiosity further led me into watching how this goat milk was obtained. I watched the milking process. It looked very easy and I knew that I could do it. I knew I would do it. This time, I won't need a partner. I only need a goat. For the very first time in a long time, I almost believed I had run out of ideas. How was I going to lay my hands on a goat? Every possible means seemed to have its own hurdle. I couldn't visit the zoo just to milk a goat. I couldn't suddenly ask Mom and Dad to get me a goat as a pet. We already had 3 dogs which regularly made messes I had to clean up while fuming with rage. They would definitely know that I was up to something, and I am not keen on bringing them in on my next point of gender. The only option remaining on my list happened to be Mrs. Coker, a neighbor whom I disliked. I may be overreacting, but she always seemed more creepy and less friendly to me. Her constant smiles wouldn't make me budge on my stance. She was a 40-year-old divorcee with a daughter my age, and rather than remarry, chose to surround herself with various kinds of animals for pets. Well, I doubt she had suitors who wanted to marry her. She looked like a goat and weighed like a cow, and although she didn't have suitors, she had cows, goats, horses, dogs, chickens, and kittens. Her home was like a mini zoo, but if I ever get to milk a goat, it was going to be hers. There were stories of her past that we were not sure were false. Rumor had it that most of the women in her family didn't have stable homes. Her grandmother was a divorcee, and so was her mum. She grew up in a home that was filled with abuse. She had watched as mother always got in an argument with her father, who ended up beating her most of the time. Her dad soon began bringing other ladies into the house just because he claimed that his wife, who nags a lot, has refused to get intimate with him since they last had an argument. It was said that rather than try to make up with her husband, her mum now decided to return the favor by equally bringing men into the home just to have sex with them. She often paid these men, who were sometimes younger than her. Her husband decided to get a divorce from her when he once walked in on her making love with a man, and they were both naked. Mrs. Coker had seen all this, and it had quite an impact on her. She saw marriage as a thing to be dreaded. She made up her mind never to get married, but at the age of 25, she saw herself in the home of a widower who had proposed to marry her after she got raped and impregnated. Not wanting to face life alone with a child by her side, she reluctantly accepted, but things didn't work out as she thought. The widower was a man who refused to bring anything to the table. He just exploited Mrs. Coker. It was when he beat her up for refusing to give him the money she didn't have that she knew that she would be better off alone with her daughter. She divorced him and decided to start rearing animals as a means of dealing with the loneliness she felt. Mrs. Coker became a farmer who randomly shared her proceeds with the neighbors on weekends. She didn't have any mouth to feed except her daughter Meg, and so, you would often see them hand in gloves, going to families to distribute eggs, milk, or some dairy produce. She was loved by all except me, and whenever I was greeted by their smiles, I returned them with a scripted grin. Parents would sometimes drop off their children with them, and they took no small delight in teaching them practical agriculture. This was the part I wanted. Practical agriculture. Practically milking a goat, but if I was going to be a student, I would need to like the teachers, or at least pretend to. Her daughter took after her in looks and size, and eventually surpassed her mom. She looked like a goat, weighed like a cow, ate like a horse, and drank like a camel. In fact, it seemed as though anything she did was done in excess. An attitude that I found really offensive. In class, she ate in excess, laughed in excess, played in excess, and fought in excess. The only thing she never had in excess was good grades. You could say she failed in excess. At one time, she seized every opportunity to get close to me, but she wasn't the kind of friend I wanted. I love people who are crazy, not stupid. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and it was clear that I had to now extend a hand of friendship if I was ever going to get near the goats. Without wasting time, I started executing my plan the next day in school. It wasn't difficult finding an opportunity, as I knew she always never did her assignments at home. She had to copy it from someone else in school. I was going to save her today. I gave her my book, which she hastily took, and that began our friendship. While she saw me as an escape route to better grades, I saw her as the path that leads to the goats. This sudden relationship progressed at a very quick pace, and she soon started coming over to our house so we could do the assignments which we were given in school. As you would rightly guess, I did the assignments and just copied them. Before long, she became a regular visitor at our home, and although my mom and dad were very much surprised as everyone else was, they were not against the friendship, as it meant we received more agricultural produce. You could call me a manipulator, but I was getting close to my goal. And besides, our relationship was mutually beneficial to everyone involved. I was helping her get good grades, and it was only fair she helped me get some good milk. Did I really like her personality? No, I didn't. Was she ever going to be more than access to milking the goats? I don't know. What happens to the relationship after I get the milk? I don't know. Time will tell. When I got to that bridge, then I would figure out how to cross it. Meg didn't show up in class on a Thursday and word soon got out that she had taken ill. On getting home, I informed my parents about it together. We all went to visit her. It turned out that she had caught a cold, but it wasn't so serious. The doctor advised that she took out time to rest, and this meant that she had to stay away from the animals. We weren't the only ones who came visiting, but as her friend, I quickly made myself feel at home. The animals were yet to be fed that evening, and I readily offered to help Mrs. Coker feed them. My parents left without me as I was still tending to the animals while Mrs. Coker received the visitors and tended to Meg. When it was time to leave, Mrs. Coker was very grateful that I came around as she was already too busy to tend to the animals. I told her it was no big deal. I was just being there for a friend. I promised to come by every day to check up on Meg and help feed the animals. My parents were really impressed with the attitude I displayed, and they commended me for it. I eagerly anticipated my arrival at the Coker Farm residence. I was greeted by the ever-smiling farm owner, who couldn't hide her excitement at my arrival. I went to check up on Meg, who was observing a bed rest just as the doctor advised. I needed to bring her up to speed on what has been going on in school before I'll feed the animals. While I was discussing with Meg, her mom interrupted us, saying that she had to go down to the pharmacy to pick up the drugs the doctor prescribed for Meg. Immediately she left, I rounded up my session with Meg and headed straight for the animals. I quickly attended to the other animals but saved the goat for last. Upon finishing with the other animals, I realized that I had a few minutes before Mrs. Coker arrived and put a stop to my escapade. This was the moment I had been waiting for, and I wasn't going to wait any longer. I quickly rushed over to the section where the goats were kept, and without much thought, I descended on the first goat I could lay my hands on. It seemed harder than I thought, as I found it difficult to get the goat to release some milk. I was doing exactly what I had seen in the video which I watched, or so I thought. I finally reached a milestone in the 10th minute when the goat released a gluey substance. But my joy was short-lived after I examined the substance and it didn't look like the milk I had seen. Then I froze when I discovered that I was in a hurry that I forgot to check the gender of the goat. Oh my God, this was a male goat. I was mad. Have I come all this way for nothing? Did I unwillingly enter into a relationship with the Cokers all for nothing? Did I tend to the sick and had all her assignments done all for nothing? What was I going to do? Do I immediately start all over again? I knew it was not possible because Mrs. Coker was probably on her way back. I had ruined my opportunity to milk a goat, and I didn't know when next it was going to come. I didn't know when next Meg would fall ill, and her mom would leave her in my care to go and get drugs. Another thought seemed better. What if I just opened up to Mrs. Coker that I would love to milk a goat, that way? I would not have to be looking over my shoulders, or hoping that someone gets ill. Hey guys, what will you do if you were me? Would you continue with the friendship that you never really wanted? I would love to know your thoughts about it.
I'm Stephanie. I live in law with my parents. They were everything to me until I met Jude, my new boyfriend. I love him so much, I don't want to get separated from him never and ever. I met Jude a few days after my parents and I moved to La because my father had just been transferred to lead a branch of the stockbroking company he works for in our old city of residence. At first, I didn't buy the idea because I would have to lose all my friends and, most importantly, my plans to get back at Truce, my first boyfriend. Truce was 3 years my senior, but our relationship was delicate. I felt safe whenever I was with him. He was an honest guy, classy and straightforward before everything changed. He was the head of the football team then, and I was just a girl on the cheerleading team. My parent knew about my relationship with Truce, and I don't think they were happy about it. My father didn't really act up, but my mom, let's just say she was acting like a typical mother who thinks her child isn't in safe hands, would do. I really appreciate their concerns, but I thought Truce wasn't that bad. Truce did visit my place from time to time, and he's always welcomed. Truce, who had no other objectives, don't waste time in the living room. We always head straight to my bedroom, you know. I was the lousy one. I screamed a lot and said so many naughty words. I think my parents heard but weren't bothered, while Truce, on the other hand, just remained cool. I did think I didn't satisfy him, but he never said that. What else can I ask for, you'll say? Moreover, my parents were busy individuals. That hasn't changed a bit anyways. They traveled on business trips a lot. I frequently followed Truce out to places or clubs. Most of them weren't so cool, but I didn't care. I felt safe with Truce. He was like my big brother. Though still against my parents' counsel, my association with Truce was perfect until that fateful night, one of the nights my parents went on their business trips as usual. Truce came to my place. As usual, he called on me, and as I was dressing up, he bumped in and met me not fully dressed. He took a long gaze at me from the head down. I noticed this, so I stopped dressing. I know I have a good shape. Assuming the mirror was lying to me, people say I took after my mom. She's hot. I've not gotten all those curves, and the 2 babies on my chest are not fully grown, but I had potentials. Truce kept admiring me. His mouth was gaping up. Elle could tell he wanted to have me, but I was teasing him. I hurried up with my dressing. I noticed he was hard, but he kept his cool. I smiled. To satisfy his lust, I kissed him passionately and whispered to his ear when we returned. We found our way to his motorcycle outside. It wasn't like those pretty bikes in Hollywood movies, but it rocks for a high school student to have his own bike. He started the cycle, and I jumped on it from behind. I held him by the waist as he zoomed off. We stopped in front of a club. This one was new. We had been to different clubs repeatedly, but not this one. I started getting uncomfortable. I looked at Truce's face, and he smiled back at me. I gulped in a handful of saliva purposefully to show my discomfort, but his emotion didn't really change. Then he came close to me as if he was going to hug me and whispered to my hearing something I never forgot: "This is where I really belong." Had I known, I would have taken to the heel, but I remained stubborn despite my instincts. Let's just assume I love being gullible, at least for that time or for the worse my whole life. My life is about to change for good on the positive part, but looking at that situation, things didn't go as planned. Well, I never had any plan, Truce plan at all. This was the day I will never forget. This was the day that changed my family's life. My father took that gig in life even though he was doing just fine here. My mom thought leaving was the best too, at least she would avoid shame, and it was depression for me on my side. I remembered vividly after that night, I said to myself, never will I date any guy until the end of high school. That didn't last much. Jude came into the picture earlier than the end of high school. Maybe I can't be trusted with my own words either. My emotion got the best of me, and I love it. Truce placed his hands around my neck as we walked towards the bouncer. I was a lot shorter than him, but I pretended to be cool with it. He started muttering some jokes that I found not funny anymore due to my current situation, but continued credulous. When we got to the bouncer, I became the stranger. It was as if he had known the bouncer longer than I knew my mom. There was great chemistry between the big guy and Truce. He allowed us in without asking for any ID. Funny, right? I know it is a culture for bouncers to ask for IDs, but this time was different. My mind flashed back to when we first met after a football game against the other best team in town, my then high school team's archenemy Oaks Christian. As the team's captain, Truce got injured early in the game. He could not proceed. He was stretched out of the playing zone, and since I was the youngest in the cheerleading team, I basically did not cheerlead at all. I was more like the errand girl in the group. I got the first aid box and walked reluctantly towards the team's captain. No one stopped me, not even the teachers. Everyone kept looking at the brave small girl walking towards the biggest boy in school. I have the skills since I was part of the Red Cross community in my junior school. I tended to his wound and made him very comfortable. Then I saw a smile on his face. I think he was satisfied with my services. He said, "I am Truce Dempsey. What is your name?" I can't believe my ears. Almost confused, I replied, "I am Stephanie Brown." Then he said, "Will you go have coffee with me tomorrow at the cafe?" Somebody hit me. The biggest boy in high school just asked me out. I carefully said, "Yes, I would love to have a cup of coffee." That was just 3 months ago from this fateful day. I thought I knew him, but that night I realized I didn't know him that much. I wanted to cry already. We entered the club. Almost everybody recognized Truce. I was surprised. How long has he been visiting this place? It was as if he was there the night before. He introduced me to everyone. The guys were top-notch, and the girls were so hot. Well, I'm the youngest, and I had potentials. The ladies are sexy to behold, and their curves are heaven. I felt like holding their 2 babies in my hands. I felt like an opposite gender by gazing at them. I noticed all the details they possessed. Before getting caught off guard, I quickly brought out my phone and started watching some videos. while I was busy with my phone, the ladies were whispering and laughing. I think they were talking about me, but who cares? I shrugged it off as I tried to find out what the boys were up to. Those guys were really planning something big or maybe crazy. Truce looked at my side from time to time and winkled at me at every instance. Everything there was kind of creepy. The noise was so loud, like every other club. The bartenders were doing their job, but 10 people were in attendance. All are familiar individuals, with me being the only stranger. The guys are done with their presumed board meeting, and each guy went for their girls. Truce came to me and asked me what will I love to take. This wasn't the best moment to get drunk. I replied, water is fine. He looked at me in disappointment, but I didn't care at this moment. I repeated I would love cold water. He stood up, went straight to the bar and got himself a few beers, and got me 2 chilled bottles of water from the big freezer beside the bar. I sipped my water while every other person was marrying. The party moved from seriousness to naughtiness. The other girls are doing their thing before I could get my head around what is going on. A certain girl was really riding on a guy's lap so hard. Looking at his face, you can tell he will soon go. The girl was so good. Several hours had gone, a lot of adult scenes, all the guys present had wet themselves except Truce, who was on his 6th bottle of beer. Then, here came the moment they had been waiting for. I was here to be initiated as Truce's new girlfriend, and I knew nothing about it. Dave, Truce's closest pal in the clique and undeniably the gang leader, broke it to me. I would be stripped naked, and all the guys will take turns on me. I fired back at the idea, and they all laughed. Lucy, the sexiest, curviest, and most endowed of the other 4 girls, said, "It's the ritual only once, and you're welcome to the club, baby." I tried to fight my way out of the club, the ladies stripped me off my clothes, and the guys started dancing around me. I felt ashamed, and I cried. I was let out to go, and Truce made me go home all by myself that night. That night, I will never forget. I wept all night, my face swollen. Truce didn't call or check on me. Even without saying it, I knew it was over. The following day, I got dressed for school. On getting to the school environment, everyone's eyes were locked on me. There were whispers and disgusting faces everywhere. It was only me that was left to wonder what was going on. I got to my class, and the atmosphere was still the same. I sat on my chair, still thinking about what happened last night. Kathy and Elle, my 2 friends, came towards me. They told me about a video of me dancing naked with some unrecognized boys posted on the school website the previous night. What? It was filmed. I said that to myself, but it felt as if I was shouting out loud. No, I am doomed, I softly said to myself. They tried to ask me about what really happened, but I was too down to give a response. Stephanie Brown. That's the principal's voice from the school speaker. You're wanted in my office now. I stood up from my seat. It looked like the whole world was upon my head. I wanted to melt down. I dragged my feet to the principal's office. My mom and dad were already in his office. He asked me what really happened. I was too ashamed to say anything. My dad couldn't look at my face, and my mom was sobbing silently. The principal asked me to go to the reception. A few minutes later, my parents came out and said to me, "You've been expelled, let's go home." I busted into tears. That was the quietest day in our home. My dad is naturally reticent, but my mom was gratuitously silent. I was in my room with my head deep in the soft pillow crying softly. A few hours later, my parents came in with 2 slices of bread, a plate of fried eggs, and a glass of juice. They sat beside me on the bed, and I could feel Mom rocking my leg. I sat down with my head bowed in shame. They comforted me before my dad revealed that he got a gig in LA and would take the chance. My mom went along with the plan. Deep in my thought, I was visualizing how I was going to get my revenge at Truce. I really don't want to leave, not now. My friends were the best. I didn't want to be separated from them, but I understood that decision was difficult for my parents. They took it because of me. I appreciated their effort. Everyone went along with the idea of leaving everything behind. Later in the evening, my friends came to our place. I updated them. They were initially reluctant. Soon they found out it was for the best. Everyone saw that as a good plan except me. I wanted to get revenge on my mess. They quickly jumped into helping me pack my stuff and assisted my parents in a few rounds. We resumed the journey very early the following day. None of our neighbors was out. I am sure my dad couldn't see the road clearly, but it was his braveness for me. We got to lie before none, moved into our new apartment, and everyone opened a new chapter in their lives. All this, just because of my foolishness. My mom got me registered in a new school. The process was easy. I had good grades, and my viral video hadn't reached La yet. That was a significant relief. I started attending class with the immediate effect of forgetting the past as soon as possible. I was a loner for the first few weeks because I didn't know who to trust anymore. Everyone tried associating themselves with the newbie, but I think I was getting better at avoiding people. That was my newest superpower. Then Abby came into the picture. She had been sitting behind me all semester, and I didn't even notice her. Wow, this girl is good. She talked to no one, and no one talked back to her. She is always reading a novel or writing something no one cared about except her. Her diary is filled with posters of aliens and spaceships. Weird, right? Help me pick my pen. It is between your legs. That voice was new. I never perceived that, and it was 3 months I resumed. I looked back. It was Abby. Babe, she's like an angel. Her lips were white, and the wet lips melted perfectly on them. I was still fantasizing about her when I heard, "Will you please help me with the pen?" "Oh, I'm sorry," I replied. "Here it is." She then raised her eyelid, trying to make me look back. Looking at me from the opposite direction was the class nerd, Jude. Jude is cute. He has a baby face and is the best student in class, but he is not sporty. This boy can't even ride a bicycle, nerd. Abby continued, "He has been looking at you since the professor introduced you to the class. I think he's into you." Why is Abby talking to me? This is strange. I would have been comfortable with this supposed discussion, but he'll be saying anything to me. She introduced me to a stalker. I took it as a setup, faced front, and gave Jude a weird face. Jude looked away with a smile on his face. It was as if his mission was accomplished. I finally noticed him. I felt unsafe and more comfortable. I rushed out to the restroom to calm myself a bit. I entered the classroom and couldn't wait for the bell. Immediately, I heard it. I carried my bag and disappeared from the premises. The following day at school, I got my stuff from my locker, and Jude came by trying to initiate some conversation. I didn't respond to his calls, though he sounded soft. I could pick he couldn't hurt a fly by nay, not him, not now and not anytime soon. Abby whispered to my ear in the class, "Give him a chance, you won't regret it this time, trust me." I looked back in awe. Did she know about it? Was she there? I felt unsecured. I understand how people that had been treated bitterly act, and I could tell you were once a victim, the soft voice continued whispering. I sighed with relief. At least she didn't know about it, I said to myself. What did you care? I whispered back. She smiled and replied, "Here he comes." I turned around and lo, Jude. "Hi, Abby," he greeted. "You good?" Abby responded. I think this two know themselves a lot. I later found out that they are twins, and my name is the leading topic in their house. Jude started with his speech. He wasn't even concentrating. My eyes were locked on his. "Can you hear me?" Jude asked sharply. "Yes," I responded in an apt. "Will you go watch a movie with me tomorrow night and maybe get a drink when returning?" "Is that a date?" I asked in return. "I guessed," he said with a tone of doubt. "Okay, this once," I replied. I couldn't believe I had just said that. That slip of tongue gave me the sweetest experience to date. After the movie night, we started going out. My parents knew about him, and they were happy that I had moved on. I couldn't believe myself, I was reborn. Jude brought me back to life. Unlike Truce, my parents were delighted with my relationship with Jude. God, this guy is well-cultured, a very respectful kid. His weird twin sister became my best and only friend in school. Babe, this girl can talk, only when she's not in the class. I found out she's the lousy type, and Jude is the timid one. That is the opposite in school. Their father works at NASA. That explained the alien and spaceship posters on Abby's diary. Their mom sells flowers in a plant store. Those two are really close. They shared everything without a tip of jealousy. They even shared my time among themselves. They made La my new home. My relationship with Jude was perfect, but we haven't gotten intimate yet. Jude said he could wait. And I really love this guy, but Truce's memory was well seated in my cerebrum. I could recall everything as if it was yesterday. Over a year now, my relationship with Jude Wilson was more pleasant than the early morning sun. I could believe what was happening. It was as if I was in a dreamland. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson are the best. They treat me as one of their own. Brad was the naughty little brother. He is tough to please. I think we will get along. Brad is addicted to his video game. I deduce that it might be natural to him that the real life. Unlike my parents, the Wilsons are very predictable. Mrs. Wilson is always available, but Mr. Wilson barely comes home. Their stamina is kind of regular, everyone knows what to do with time. Everything with the Wilsons is routine. I like this home, and I fit in comfortably. Recently, my parents even allowed me to spend weeks with the Wilsons. It is a home away from home. The Wilsons are not as boring as they look. This person can party, they love traveling and even have movie nights every Friday. We are now in our finals, prom is in a few weeks. Jude seems to be very busy recently. He is the valedictorian, and as the school president, he is planning the best prom yet. Abby wasn't helping her twin brother. I wasn't surprised. She's good at ignoring people, and Jude was okay with it too. I really miss Jude. This is the first time in a long time Jude wasn't really available, but Abby was making up for his brother. I had plans too. My mom and I had been visiting wear stores and boutiques. As the first lady of the prom night, I ought to look my best. I didn't really know my mom was good at selecting dresses until now. All my life, she had been wearing office wears. Initially, I didn't trust her choice, but in time, babe, Mom was good. She got me new pairs of heels. I appreciated her, and I gave her arguably the longest hug I have given her. She smiled in satisfaction. Tonight is the prom. Everything was going on fine with me, Jude, Abby, and my parents. Jude called me as usual. I understood he was trying to make up for his absence, but the information was different this time. He said he had provided an Uber for the night. That was thoughtful of him. I informed my dad about the news since he promised me the day before to transport me to the prom center. My dad was okay with it, and he wished me good luck. Braun. That was the doorbell. My mom got the door. Baby, it is Jude, she shouted. I came down the stairs. I was walking like an angel. I wasn't perfect with heels, but try not to rush myself. Jude was in his tuxedo. He looked up to take his queen. He was smiling, and I was smiling. My dad looked so pleased, and my mom joined her hands together, raised towards her chin. I am not getting married yet, I snapped at the duo. I met up with Jude at the end of the stairs. Jude whispered, I love you, beauty. I waved my hands at my parents as we walked towards the black SUV parked in front of the lawn. The driver was in a black suit. The driver turned, he was wearing a black sunglass. The face looked familiar, but how did I know a bearded young man? The driver removed his glasses, and lo, it was Truce. Truce. I can't believe myself. I ran into the house and straight to my room upstairs. What should I have done? My old boyfriend, who tarnished my image, is here to pick me on my prom night. Should I go in the Uber or stay home? What did you think? What did you think? What did you think?
My 17th birthday was just a few days away, and I needed a new pair of shoes to celebrate my birthday. I like ordering items online because they are cheaper. No week passes by that a delivery man wouldn't deliver some goods at my door. But I wanted to celebrate my birthday with a new shoe. I didn't want to celebrate my birthday in my old shoes. Even though most of the shoes I have, I don't usually wear them. On this fateful day, I was at home doing nothing, so I decided to order a shoe for my 17th birthday. I do not have a lot of friends, therefore, I am planning my birthday myself. I was sitting on the sofa when I heard a knock on my door. When I opened the door, I met a charming-looking young man who came to deliver my order. I couldn't take my eyes off him because of his charming looks. The delivery boy noticed that my eyes were fixated on him, so he didn't want to look at me directly in the eye. "Hi, I am Alyssa," I introduced myself to him. I was the one that ordered these pairs of shoes online. This time, the delivery boy raised his head and told me that he was aware that I ordered the pair of shoes. He said that was why he is at my door. He handed over the pair of shoes to me and turned back to take his leave. While he was walking towards his bike, I checked the shoe he delivered to me and I noticed that the shoe he brought was not mine. "Hey sir, please come back," I quickly called him. When the delivery boy returned to where I was standing, I told him that the shoe he brought was not mine. I told him that I was very sure because the pack looked too small, and I do not believe that my shoe can fit in a small pack like the one you gave to me. The delivery boy came back smiling and told me to wait. "Oh, it's another pack. The first pack I gave to you was for my mother, and she ordered a pen or something." The delivery boy collected the shoes he gave me the first time and gave me the original shoe I ordered. I was already having him in her dreams at that time. I was already looking forward to having him in her arms all day long. At this stage, I knew the only way I can have the delivery boy is by inviting him for a coffee. When he handed the shoes to me, I invited him for a coffee but he resisted. After much pressure, he obliged and entered my room. When the delivery boy entered my room, he decided to stand. I was not comfortable with the way he was standing, so I told him to sit on the sofa. When he sat, I sat close to him and started engaging him in a conversation. I quickly excused myself to get him water from the fridge. When I brought the water to him, we continued our conversation. I had already fallen in love with the delivery boy, so I wanted to know everything about him. I thought the best way to start a meaningful conversation with the delivery boy was to ask personal questions. I thought I would be able to persuade him through my speech. I wanted to ask her the first major question. I thought it will be better if I ask about his family first. I know before he answer all my questions, I would get what I wanted. "So, tell me about your family background." No sooner than the delivery boy start talking about his family than I excused myself again. This time I quickly went into her bedroom. I changed into a sexier outfit that would attract the delivery boy. When I came out of her bedroom, I noticed that the delivery boy could not stop looking at her cleavages. I started whispering in her mind. I knew I was getting closer to what I wanted. "So, I am all ears. Tell me about your family background." "I was born into an average family," he said. "My mother and my father do menial jobs to support me, my brothers, and my sisters. I have 2 brothers and a sister. My brother works in a post office as an accountant while my sister works as a hairstylist in a salon. I am the first child of my family, so it means I gave a lot of responsibilities to shoulder." Alyssa asked him when he started working as a delivery boy. He said I started working as a delivery boy immediately after I left high school. I left high school at the age of 18 and I am 24 years at the moment, which means I have been working as a delivery boy for the past 6 years. I asked him if he has any plans of going to college. For now, he said I still see myself as a delivery boy, but I am saving up to enroll in college in the next few years. I have always dreamt of becoming a computer engineer since I was a young boy. I would do everything humanly possible to achieve that goal. Oh, I also want to study computer engineering in college too. It seems that we have a lot of things in common. I just graduated from high school and I will want to try other things before I get enrolled in college. My love for the delivery boy continued to increase while I listened to his story. I didn't want the conversation to stop because we were already making eye contact. "I want to know about your hobbies." "My hobbies are traveling, watching football, reading, watching movies, and listening to music." My love for traveling was one of the reasons I took the delivery job 6 years ago. I wanted to flow with the conversation and I wanted the delivery boy to believe that we had a lot of things in common, so I told him I also love traveling, even though I am always indoors most of the time. I asked him the countries he has traveled to. To my surprise, the delivery boy said he has never traveled out of the United States. He said he has only traveled to some states in the United States like Florida, Texas, Alabama, and New York. The delivery boy asked me a question for the first time in the conversation. He asked about the countries I have traveled to, pardon my manners, I pleaded. I said I didn't ask for his name since we started the conversation. He told me his name is Mike. He said he didn't ask for my name because he has already seen my name on the parcel he delivered to me. Now back to the question, I said. I told him I have traveled to the United Kingdom, Spain, France, and Canada. He asked me the reason I traveled to those countries I mentioned. I told him I visited those countries mostly on vacation. You said you like watching football. Which football team is your favorite? He said, although I live in the United States, my favorite football team is Barcelona Football Club. I support the Barcelona Football Club because of Lionel Messi. I do not watch football because I do not like it, Alyssa said. Even though I see a lot of women playing football nowadays, I still believe it is a men's game. Who knows, I might start supporting Barcelona Football Club because of you. I will be very happy if you do that. You will enjoy watching Barcelona Football Club because they play sexy and attractive football just like you. Did you just say I am sexy? Alyssa asked. Yes, you are, the delivery boy replied. At this moment, I knew I was on her way to getting what I wanted, but I wanted to take my time. I thought the best way of continuously getting closer to him is to continue the conversation we were having. So you said you like reading, can you tell me about the books you have read? I have read a lot of novels. I have lost count of the number of novels I have read. Although, the majority of the novels I have are romance novels. I just love romance novels. If I may ask, why do you like romance novels? Alyssa said. I like romance novels because I want to be romantic. I want to be a romantic boyfriend for my girlfriend. I don't want to be a boring boyfriend. That is interesting, Alyssa said. So, tell me the names of some of the novels you have read. I will like to have them too, I said. I also want to learn how to be romantic. If that is the case, I will help you bring a lot of romance novels that I have. Do not stress yourself by going to the bookshop, the delivery boy said. I got up and embraced the delivery boy. She said she was very happy with his kind gesture. After the hug, I returned to where I was sitting. This time, I moved closer to Mike again. You said you like movies too, so tell me the movies you have watched. I was more interested in this movie aspect because I am a lover of movies too. Most times when I am in my room, I am always watching movies. I like comedy movies, the delivery boy said. I love movies that make me laugh and take off the daily stress that I have passed through at work. So, tell me your type of movies too, the delivery boy asked. Alyssa said, I love romantic movies a lot, Alyssa replied. The same way you said you have lost count on the number of books you have read, is the same way I have lost count on the number of romantic movies I have watched, Alyssa told the delivery boy. I like romance movies because they are always lengthy. I like romantic movies too, Mike said. I do not watch them because they are very lengthy, and it takes a lot of time to watch. You know I am a very busy man, so it will be difficult for me to watch lengthy movies, Mike said. That is the reason I love short comic movies. I can watch them within a few hours, and they help me relax well as I said before. Alias said she will want Mike to follow her to the cinema very soon. Mike obliged and promised to follow her to the cinema when he is off duty. Alias couldn't contain her joy when Mike told her he will follow her to the cinema. She said she can't wait to go and have a nice time at the cinema with him. Now, let us talk about your music taste, Alyssa said. Tell me the types of songs you listen to and your favorite artists. I am a big fan of R&B songs. I like songs that are slow and have strong lyrical content. I was smiling after Mike's explanation. So tell me who your favorite artists are. I am a big fan of Chris Brown and R. Kelly, Mike said. I told Mike that I want us to play a game. I told him that I want to know if he is a big fan of the artists he mentioned. I told him that I want him to list 10 songs of the artists he mentioned as his favorite. Mike laughed and he started listing it. Mike said he will start with R. Kelly. Mike said some of R. Kelly's songs that he knows are I Believe I Can Fly, The Same Girl, It Seems That You Are Ready, I'm a Flirt, Down Low, Trapped in the Closet, If I Could Turn Back the Hands of Time, Fiesta, Sex Planet, I Wish, You Remind Me of Something and Half on a Baby. I was wowed as Mike continued to list R. Kelly songs. I am surprised, Alyssa said. But you have to list Chris Brown songs too for you to win the game. Mike nodded his head and kept smiling. Mike said some of Chris Brown's songs that he knows are Forever, Blow My Mind, Undecided, Don't Wake Me Up, Trackstar, Run It, Take You Down, New Flame, Under the Influence, Loyal, No Guidance, and Go Crazy. You won, Now I agree that you are a big R&B fan and you are also a fan of Chris Brown and R. Kelly. Mike also returned the gesture. So, tell me your type of music and your favorite artist too, Mike said. I told him I love R&B songs too. Mike asked who my favorite artists are. I told him I like Celine Dion, Rihanna, and Beyoncé. Mike told me that I should also mention 10 songs of these artists I mentioned. I said, so you want me to mention 10 songs because I asked you to mention 10 songs. I said, okay, I accept the challenge. I started with Celine Dion. I said some of Celine Dion's songs that she knows are My Heart Will Go On, I Surrender, It's All Coming Back to Me Now, All by Myself, The Power of Love, To Love You More, I'm Alive, Have You Ever Been in Love, Ashes, A New Day Has Come, Beauty and the Beast, and Just Walk Away. I told him that some of Rihanna's songs that she knows are Umbrella, Diamonds, We Found Love, Love on the Brain, The Monster, Don't Stop the Music, Only Girl, Desperado, Work, Rude Boy, Needed Me, Pour It Up, Towards the Sun, and Man Down. Lastly, I said some of Beyoncé's songs that I know are Say My Name, Crazy in Love, Countdown, Run the World, Irreplaceable, Love on Top, Formation, Brown Eyes, Naughty Girl, Beautiful Liar, Partition, and Dance for You. Mike clapped as Alyssa kept listing the songs. They both laughed and applauded each other. In a bid to continue the conversation, I asked Mike about the things he likes and the things he dislikes. He said he liked people that are honest, truthful, hardworking, and open-minded. He said he hates laziness, dishonesty, and lies. When he finished talking about his likes, he asked me about my likes and dislikes too. I said I like almost everything he said he likes and dislikes. I told Mike that I was not wrong the other time when I said that we have a lot of things in common. I said it's difficult to believe that we can have so much in common on meeting for the first time. Why did you say you hate dishonesty? Has anyone broken your heart before? He said he used to have a girlfriend when he was in high school. He said we were in the same class and he loved her very much. He said she started acting the other way when they left school. He said she started ignoring his calls, and she was caring as she was when they were in college. He said at that point, he knew someone else has snatched her from him. He said he had no other option than to break up with her. He said it was very painful because she was the first girl he would ever fall in love with. Oh, that said, Alyssa said. It's all right. Mike replied. So, did you date anyone else after she broke up with you? I asked Mike. Mike said he hasn't gone into a relationship since then. He said he has been focused on his work and his family. He said he doesn't want another distraction. So you mean women are a distraction? I said. Mike said some women are a distraction because they are not honest. He said they wouldn't love a man the way he loves them. He said there are also many other reasons why he has decided to stay away from having a relationship. Alyssa said she wants to know the reasons. Mike said he just wants to concentrate on his job and his family. He said he wants to be able to save up so that he can achieve his aim of becoming a computer engineer. Alyssa said, wow, that's fine. She asked Mike if he would consider going into a relationship if he finds someone that is honest. Mike said it's a probability. Tell me about your love life too, Mike asked me. I have never been into a relationship deeply like you. I had a very close friend in high school that people used to think we were dating. We were very close but we were not in any relationship. At that point, I knew had Mike where I wanted him. I knew I could do anything I wanted with him. But I wanted to take her time and see where the conversation will lead to. So, how have you been coping since you broke up with your girlfriend? Mike said I have been coping well. Mike understood what I meant by the question. He knew I wanted to ask if he has been having sex since he left his girlfriend, but he decided to play along. He wanted me to say it directly. I know he has been coping well. But, how has he been coping with lack of sex, or does he have a sex partner? Mike smiled. He was happy because he heard what he wanted to hear from me. Mike said he doesn't have a sex partner. He said he has been able to stay away from sex since he and his girlfriend broke up. I smiled and told Mike that I admire his courage. I said it's not easy to stay away from sex that long, especially having sex before. Mike also wanted to know about my sex life. Tell me if you have ever had sex before. Mike said since I said she hasn't had a deep relationship, he was curious to know if I have gotten down with someone. I said I have gotten down many times with my high school friend even though we weren't dating. I excused myself to get a drink for Mike. At that stage, both Mike and I were already in the mood to get down with each other. When I got up, Mike couldn't take his eyes off me as I walked to the kitchen. I realized that Mike's eyes were fixated on me, so I started walking seductively to draw Mike's attention. When I entered the kitchen, Mike thought to himself that that was the perfect opportunity. He needed to have sex with me. I picked a drink from the fridge and went to the kitchen to pick a cup. While I was walking to the kitchen, Mark stood up and trailed me. He stood at my back, but I did not know because I was pouring iced teas into a cup. While I was pouring iced tea into the cup, I felt Mike near me grabbing my butt. I knew it was Mike because we were the only ones in the house. I deliberately acted like I didn't know someone was at my back grabbing my butt. I was already in the mood, and I was enjoying what Mike was doing. Mike continued grabbing my butt. He was waiting for me to turn to him so that he could plant a kiss on my mouth. Immediately I turned back to see who was at my back. Mike planted a kiss on my mouth and smiled at me. At that stage, Mike and I were deep into each other. I pecked him many times in the kitchen, and he pecked me too. We continued to peck each other because we wanted to keep things simple. I led Mike back to my room and we continued our conversation. My conversation with Mike became more intimate. I was wrapped up in his arms while I continued to chat with him about his private life. Mike wouldn't talk for 2 minutes without giving a peck, and I was always ready to receive his peck. After about 3 hours of chatting and pecking, Mike told me he was leaving. He said his family would be waiting for him. I followed him to my gate and we kissed for the last time. It was an awesome experience for me. Since then, I have ordered more than 6 items. Most of the items are items that I do not need. I kept on ordering these items with the hope that Mike will be the one to deliver them. 6 months after, I have not been able to see Mike. I want someone to help me look for him. Hi, I'm Juliet. I make video skits. I call myself a professional until I found out that I am another tool created to be used. I know for sure that I am a talent to behold. I have the skills and talent to be a great social media influencer. I made a short video that was everywhere in college. The school management was proud of the kind of students I had become within a few months of studying. The future looked bright, but not a penny was given for my effort. I wanted to be famous, but what is the use of fame without a penny? I didn't regret the outcome of the event, but I wasn't proud of it either. This is the story of how I made the best short video yet but received no compensation for such wonderful creativity. I grew up in a house where people cherish their communication garget than real-life communication. Except, for my dad, he is extrinsic. While I was growing up, I didn't go along at all with my dad. We had different philosophies about life. I tried to impress him, but all my efforts are futile. So, as I grow older, we grow apart. Although, he always tries to make it up to me, my mind is made. If he doesn't like what I love, there is no reason for me to behave anything to do with him. Things went on that way until when I decided to go to the College of Art and Dramatics without even telling him about it. My mom was different. Although she loves gadgets too, she sees the point in what my father was saying. Howbeit, she encourages me to continue in my path. She usually says, once I am happy, she is happy as well. She motivates everyone in the house, even our dog, Garfield. I remembered when she was teaching Garfield toilet training. She did tell it that yes, you can make it, and did give it a star badge for every success it achieve. Garfield is such a lazy and uncooperative dog. God knows where my dad got that dad. The only friend it has is Jeff, my younger brother. Jeff is nice to everyone and everything in the house. Even the mouse in his room is now his buddy. My younger brother, Jeff, understands me the most. I guess because I was the one he grew up looking up to. We are 5 years apart. That is enough for me to be an influence on him. He did help me shoot my videos and assist me in the casting process. He got so good that he started giving me incredible ideas. Sometimes, I got jealous of his great minds, and sometimes, I am full of his praises. I thought I had finally seen someone close that we could do this together until he started showing interest in animals and nature. He told my dad he wanted to be a zoologist just like him. He then would go to the zoo with my dad instead of helping me shoot my videos. His love for animals and nature quickly grew to the extent that he quickly forgot all about video making, but even with his new interest, he was still my #1 fan. At school, things weren't going fine too. I remembered my presentation when I was a 2nd grader. I did a video with a pen and a pencil saying funny stuff about themselves. It was hilarious, but instead of my mates laughing at the comedy video they were watching, they laughed at me instead. It was the most embarrassing day of my life. Although the class teacher tried to console me and awarded my presentation the best out of the rest, that wasn't enough. It ruined my confidence until Jeff started showing interest in what others called my weirdness. Though, when I was younger, my parents shared my dream. but I later found out they were doing all those stuff because I was still a kid. Jeff was an angel sent from heaven. I could boldly say then that Jeff helped build my confidence. With the level of my video making, skills and intelligence put into it, I only did the video for myself and for the YouTubers to comment using a disguised identity. To date, I haven't done any presentations at school because I was afraid to eat the laughingstock once again. I was enjoying my life and things were going fine. I didn't care what people had to say about my videos. As far as I am concerned, the virtual viewers' comment is the priority. My mom was cool with my video making and my younger brother was still a fan. I tried to win my dad over but to no avail. I won't give up on pleasing him. He is my father. He must love what I love. I think I needed the fatherly love more than I had thought. The house was still on its routine where everyone get glued to their mobile phone or personal computer. My dad wasn't a fan of this. He still believes in the old ways. He usually says physical communication is the best. My mom was the only one that understands him. My younger brother was the most supportive, but not my dad and me. No, our paths never crossed even if we tried to. Trying to please each other always gets on one party's wrong side. We both felt left out. So, I decided to lock myself in and impress my viewers on YouTube and myself. Things were going on that way and no one thought it was something we needed to correct, except for Mom, whose face is affected by the shortcomings of the family. But she pretended she was fine with it, even though it is obvious she wasn't pleased with all. Yes, she must be seeing a therapist without other family members knowing about it because I don't understand how she gets along in our excesses so easily. One day, I was surfing the internet when I came across my school, the College of Arts and Dramatics. I made my findings and I realized the school was in for admission. I am opt-in for admission without telling my parents. I had my reasons. They are not fans of the career path I chose. I didn't just put in for the school because I was ready for college, but to have a genuine reason to leave home for good and move on with my life. But that wasn't the case later on. I guess that happens to every teenage girl at one point in life. A few months had passed, and I went to check the mailbox as my culture is. Most mails are usually for my dad and they are all about animals and pets expedition. They bore me. Jeff loved reading them. He is a fan of animal expenditure too. My mom just shoved them in the drawer and wait for dad to open his packages. But this time, one of the mail was for me. It was from the college I registered for. I was admitted to. I couldn't contain the happiness within. I quickly went for my bass guitar and played. I knew I was playing out loud and the neighbors might not be comfortable with the noise, but didn't care. I can't wait for everyone to get back home for me to share my great accomplishment. I shared the good news with Mom and Jeff immediately they got back home. She was happy for me. She changed immediately and jumped to the kitchen to cook my favorite. My younger brother wasn't too happy with the news. He thought he will end up being alone and he didn't want to. I tried my best to comfort him and told him I would call him every week to know how he is doing. I also told him he can do better by himself. He eventually changed his mood. While my mom and I were still getting the table set, my dad finally showed up. I told him about my new achievement before he could relax. He was too tired that night and showed no interest in my sayings. He congratulated me, but I could tell it wasn't real. He didn't eat with the family at the dining table that night. It was not a cause of alarm. That won't be the first time. Anytime he comes home late like that, he always prefers to eat in his room. I ate my food and went to my room in quite a hurry. I wasn't in my happiest mood anymore. My father's reaction changed my mood. I tried visiting the site to college again for updates since I might be resuming soon. While surfing through the site, I found a link that goes to the freshmen's page. I clicked on it out of curiosity, and that was my first move to transformation. I met some cool people on the webpage, who we quickly get along. It was as if they were waiting for me all my life. I couldn't believe what I met on the page. Everything came faster than I had thought. I realized I am not so weird either, just that people around me here just didn't get me. I found that I am sociable than I had thought of myself. I shared some of my old videos with the new friends I had made. They applauded my class. "Wow, you're good," commented Stephanie. Stephanie is my favorite of my 3 new digital friends. Stephanie was quite encouraging. We had shared so many ideas. She told me of her friend that had been admitted into the college as well. I wasn't interested in knowing her friends, but because she insisted, I adhered to the idea. I am not a crowd person that I know for sure. Days became weeks and weeks, months. Finally, it is time to go to college. I had packed my things and Mom had gotten a few things for me too. I am prepared. I had messaged Stephanie and the crew, and we had planned our great entry into the institution. For the last few months, I had glued more with my virtual friends than my physical family. I made a short skit to say goodbye to my family. I assisted my mom to set the table. My father came in later in the evening. We all sat at the dining to take our last supper. I rushed to my room to get my laptop. I played the video for them before we start to eat. Mom and Jeff were impressed, but my dad, being my dad, was not impressed, not at all. He asked me, "How are you going to cater for yourself doing this? You need to plan for the future." Mom stepped on him. I noticed her doing so. I took my food and decided to take my meal alone in the room. The last night wasn't so nice. I wanted to make a good impression of myself before leaving, but my dad had other ideas. So bad, I quickly find comfort in the company of my virtual friends. I spent most of the time chatting with them. Dad also regretted what he did. Mom must have spoken with him. He came to my room to apologize, but I wasn't interested in his apologies. I locked my door from behind. He went back to the living room and started playing Disc of My Childhood. I didn't care since I am still angry at him. The following morning, I had prepared my bags. I planned on taking public transport to college. I can't wait to get to college and leave the house where I was the odd one. But when I got to the living room, Mom and Dad had a new plan. They wanted to drive me to college, and my dad could make a remedy for his last night's attitude. Jeff was also in support of this. I am not surprised, and Jeff needed the family to be running smoothly because of his mental well-being. I was not pleased with the idea, but I accepted anyway. I determined not to talk to anyone until I get to college. Things were going as I had planned before my mom started tapping my dad. It got awkward that I was forced to ask, "What is going on?" Then my dad cleared his throat before apologizing about the night before. "It is fine," I replied and immediately plugged in my earpiece. Noticing that I wasn't moved by his apologies, he wanted to initiate talks about my childhood. My mom loves this part. I remember her telling me that all the decisions my dad made since I was born were because of me. He sold his old house to get a smaller apartment because of the cost. He left being a gym instructor to take a job at the zoo to have enough earning for his newly found family. All he wanted to be is a responsible father, a father that I would be proud of. But that wasn't the case. I think he was a little bit disappointed about what I had become. All I asked of him was just for him to support me, and that's all. He talked about how I was his little princess, my favorite colors and likes. I was not paying attention at first, but later I started laughing and responding to his jokes. He got me this time. This is the kind of father I love. He apologized again for the previous night. This time I was quick to forgive him. When we got to the countryside, he asked my mom to go to the back seat and asked me to come to sit at the driver's seat. He wanted to teach me how to drive. I think he had already planned this with the rest of the family, seeing Jeff smiling at me. Before that day, he had paid for my driving lessons, but I did fail on several occasions. It wasn't that I was doing it purposefully, I was just scared of getting hit or hitting someone else. I got to sit at the driver's side, but I was still scared. He calmed me down. "It is only you and me, no one else," he said. "All you have to do is to avoid the upcoming vehicle as you do in video games," he rejoined. I started quite slow. He encouraged me to do better. I increased the speed. I was being careful. He taught me the use of the gear. "We are not in a hurry," he said. Then my mind stroked back to my friends at the college. "No, I will miss the grand entrance we had planned," I said to myself. I wanted to hurry up, but I don't want to disappoint my dad this time. I continued driving, even though I was far slower than him. He encouraged me for being steady. I quickly learned a few tricks from him. I couldn't call myself a pro, but I was far above a novice at that point. I drove to college. Mom was just taking photos throughout the whole journey. We branched at some places on the way, mostly due to Jeff's demands. Before we got to school, Jeff requested we stop at a museum. The museum had so many antiques and historical facts. Bad enough, we were not allowed to take photos of those things we saw. It was worthwhile, but we couldn't have anything for the great sight. As we exit the museum, Mom called everyone for selfies. She took a couple of shots, then we continued our journey. Now, at the college, I couldn't believe I would miss the same family I had planned my whole life to leave. I shared a big hug with my family. Mom, being Mom, took another photo of me. They were not in a hurry to leave. Jeff requested I hug Garfield for the last time. I sounded weird, but I couldn't believe I complied. It was a happy and sad moment at the same. I waved bye-bye to them and they left. I turned around and looked in the huge building in front of me. This is the new beginning I had been waiting for, I said to myself. My life was about to change forever. As I was about to step into the hallway, I remembered my days at high school. Although most students saw me as being weird, they respect my abilities. I was made the head of the school media unit when I was just a 10th grader. There were some seniors in the club, but my skills placed me above them all at that level. I love being at the microphone station where I am privileged to announce for the school. I assisted the principal and the school board whenever they are involved in social meetings. My position got me close with Mr. Hartman, the school principal. We bonded a lot. I had so many reasons to go to his office. I went to his office often, both on official duty and frivolous ones. Except for the day I had to go to his office for him to place me on probation because I was involved in a fight with a bully. That was Billy, the obese bully, deceived by his size. I beat him. He went home to call his parents. He was asked to stay home for a week, but my dad pleaded my case well. I was only placed on probation. I guessed because I was a girl. While I was on probation, although I stepped down from my position as the head of the school media unit, I still helped whenever I was called upon. For sure my absence will be noticed. I was the head for 3 straight years, the first of its happening. No one had been the head of the media team more than a year, but I was for 3 years. I might be anything else, but I am sure I am humble. Even though some were jealous of my praise and fame, for instance, Kathy, my classmate, and subordinate when I was in my final years. She made a group of her own that antagonizes the progress of the core group. She was almost successful, but not successful, of course. The majority of the group were in my support and we did things the way it should be done. After several trials she stopped being a rebel and joined hands with me. I accepted her without questioning her. To be truthful, I questioned her loyalty at first, but when I realized she was in for good this time, I opened my hands wide to accept her. That was my dream for college too. I knew I was good, and to date, there has not been any unprofessional video maker greater than me that I know of. I walked through the hallway as all freshmen would walk. I was nervous and I kept looking at everything on the hallway. The guys quickly found out that I was a freshman. Hey, preschool, some would say. Hello, newbie, some others would say. At every greeting, I waved back at them. Unlike high school, people here are so nice. I was 2 hours late from the grand entrance I had planned with Stephanie and the rest of the crew, Adam and Dave. I don't want to call them, since it is obvious they were already disappointed. They didn't call and I took it for what it was. They were not happy with me. The hallway is filled with historical facts about the institution. I was surprised that most of the popular Hollywood film directors and producers were graduates of this institution. My soul almost jumped off my body. I tried my best to keep cool, but it was easy for the other students to find out that I was new. I guessed it was easy for them because they acted the same way on their first entrance. As I was walking down the hallway, I was trying to find another freshman like me. I was almost at the end of the long lobby when I saw some students rushing towards the edge. I asked one of them what was happening. She said all freshmen are asked to come to the hall. Finally, I had something to do. I sat beside the new girl in the hall. Since I had been at the college, I had not seen my proposed friends yet. Hi, I said to the strange new girl, I am Juliet. May I know you? I asked. She replied in a very funny tone, Hey, Juliet, I'm Elizabeth, but you can come to me, Liz or Lizzie, just as you wish. Wow, this could be talkative. I would have to run away from, I said to myself. After a series of welcome presentations, the provost, Professor Dixon, eventually showed up. Throughout the presentations, Liz wasn't paying attention. She easily found comfort in my company. I didn't want to ignore her. That would not be polite of me. But babe, I am not interested, can't you see? I noticed some glitches in the video projection. I called Liz's attention to them, and the girl did not care. All she wanted to do is to socialize. Then, I broke it to her. Babe, I am not the social type, I said. She smiled and said back to me, I am not as well, but I am working on that. I laughed at her. I tried not to create a scene. Then, you're doing it wrong. She laughed back. How did you know? You're not good at socializing too. She asked. I know how to do it wrong, I said jokingly. I guessed she succeeded in making me talk eventually. We soon generate some chemistries. And I like her. There was a sudden silence at a moment. We looked up, and there she was, the provost. She introduced herself as Professor Mary Dixon. She said so many things, but more than half of the assembly wasn't interesting. Liz and I were lost in our discussion. I guess Professor Dixon found out, but she did not care. She told us to go visit the portals to get the keys to our rooms for the next 3 years. She called it a day and we all left the auditorium. I lost contact with Liz. I quickly regretted it. I should have collected her phone digits, I said to myself. I got my keys and went straight to my new hostel. I got to the room. My room is room M3. The door was ajar. For sure someone is inside. I entered the room in curiosity, and lo, that's her right there, Yvonne. Yvonne is an African American. She looked more like a model than a filmmaker. During productions, she gets herself easily into the main role because of her beauty. But don't doubt her ability, she is a good actress. Hello, I greeted her. She didn't respond, she was making up her face. She had already gotten aside, set up her things. There are so many pinks in her things. It was as if I meant Barbie in real life. I took the bed furthest to her because I don't want to get unnecessarily close to her. As I was about to lie on the bed and take my phone to call Stephanie, someone knocked at the door. May I? The voice from behind the door asked. Yes, of course, I replied. The person entered, it was Liz. I was euphoric to see her once more. How did you get to know this is my room? I asked her in curiosity. Because the room is mine as well, I said with joy. She set her things up and lay on her bed. We kept talking, then Yvonne finally said something. Hi girls, I will be going to a party now, I might not return tonight. Please don't touch my stuff, and she left. Wow, that girl is a bitch. Later that night, when Liz had slept and Yvonne wasn't back home, I took my phone and called Stephanie. She apologized for being such a bitch, she had been busy selling her talent since she resumed. She told of a video making board where the best video made is auctioned. She promised to come over to my room the next morning. The night became day, Yvonne wasn't back. Liz and I were in filmmaking department, that meant we will have to go to class together every day. We got dressed and Stephanie showed up. Stephanie wasn't in the same department as we, she is in the film directing department. We promised to see later after class. Days become weeks, then months. We later found out that Yvonne's hobby is making out. She had shared the bed with almost 25 guys since we resumed. I once overheard some guys speak of how good she is. A guy said she can make a guy last 2 hours. She is so good that you will want to stay there forever. One said her private part is like honey, so sweet. Disgusting. Liz is a bright student. In the first few weeks, she is the leading student by a big margin. I later found out that she wanted to be a medical doctor, but her guardian encouraged her to learn filmmaking first since she's still very young. Unlike me, I choose filmmaking against the wish of my parents. For the past few weeks, I had been following Stephanie to the boardroom. I watched how things are been done. Stephanie had earned over $100 since she started. Wow, so I can make money here. I made a video, the video lasted a week, and shared it with the board administrator. He loved the video and shared it with some of his friends. Before 3 weeks my video was everywhere. The school management loved it. They kept sharing and re-uploading. Last night, my mom calced me that she was the video I made. My dad was proud of me, but the sad news was that it wasn't auctioned. I didn't make a penny from the video, but I became famous as I wanted to be. No award, compensation, or recommendations. It was a futile effort. I guessed I was not professional enough. What do you think?
Hi, I'm Stacy. I have lived alone with my mom since my sister went to college a few years back. I never knew my dad, all my memories of him were from pictures or what I was told about him. I really didn't mind, my sister was my whole world before she left for college. Recently, I have had problems with boys. No guy wanted to date me for a week at the most. The guys just wanted to get intimate with me and ditch me. At first, I thought I was the one ditching them. But now I realized I was the one being played. I couldn't take this anymore. I demanded a change, and I am trying to fix things at all costs. Things shouldn't continue like this. This is my story. This is how it began. I was the hottest girl in school. I dated as many guys as I wanted. Or should I say the guys dated me long enough as they wanted. I thought it was all about me until I realized. I wanted to make my sister's version of high school for myself. My sister, Brielle, was my best friend. She was only because she filled my head with how he dated a guy and ditched him. How another became a crybaby because of her. How Vic knelt down in the dome just to go watch a movie with her. And some other cool stuff. Don't be deceived, Brielle is way better than me. My mum said she took after our aunt, who lives in Dallas. I am just my mum's daughter. Even though I possess more prominent curves, both hind and rare, Brielle is still a babe to behold. I would have taken all her stories to be myths, but they were evident. Most of the time, when Mum was off to the office, Brielle came home with different guys, And she didn't repeat one twice. Never except for Drew. I could tell the reason myself, that guy was huge and muscular. Maybe he hit the gym regularly because the packs on his abdomen are well packed. Drew is the kind of guy every woman fantasizes about. Right from grade 8. I had been planning myself to achieve more than Brielle. She was my role model. But I wanted to reset the pace. It went well, just as I had planned. And I can tell I learned from the best. Brielle was damn good. I started with Stuart. Stuart was just the kind of guy you can call the victim of everyone. Straightforward to prey on. That day was my day to be a predator. And lo, the perfect target had started eyeing me. It was easy for me to find out this boy would die to find his way into me. I noticed this. Yet I was playing hard to get. I did winkle at him whenever I caught him staring. But he was one of those boys who really needed a motivational speaker to kill a cockroach. He was my perfect victim. And I was waiting like a cat at the end of the hole to devour the rat. We were at Hudson's party that night. Hudson wasn't really celebrating anything. In fact, no one knew his birthday because he throws a party every Friday. All Hudson needs to throw a party is his parents absent from home. I was trying to get a cocktail glass when I caught Stuart sitting on the sofa behind me. He was busy gazing at my behind while his friends were doing the talking. I don't think Stuart was really interested in the discussion. He saw himself in me. Who won't want to get their hands on those vast backsides? You can't blame the innocent boy. Who doesn't know the kind of problem he was about to get into? I winkled at him as I usually do. And I was moving from the living room towards the direction of the rooms. I looked back to see if he would follow. But he was resting his back on the sofa and his friend saying things to his head this time. He got up and walked in my direction. Finally, he had been motivated. He followed me and took all the corners I took. He bumped onto me, he said sorry and started shaking in his voice. I placed my hand on his head to calm his nerve. I know you like me, I whispered to his ear. I put his hands on my chest. He couldn't believe what was happening. I squeezed his hand on my chest. He looked at my face in astonishment. I bit the corner of my lips. His hands were vibrating on my chest. I opened the door and dragged him in while I gave him the kiss of his life. I could depict that he was a novice. But I played along nicely. That was what I had been doing since. Acting. I lay on the bed and encouraged him to come over to me. Before we started the scene, the lucky man got lucky earlier than expected. I smiled, I wasn't really interested in him. I was just teasing him. And the little guy fell for the awaiting bait. Before noticing my smile, I pushed him off me and gave him a straight face, making him uncomfortable. He pleaded for the release earlier. I could tell the guy was disappointed, but who cares? Right. I found my way out of the room and smashed the door behind me, proving that I was really angry with him. He jumped after me and pulled my hand from behind. And apologized. I didn't consider his apology a bit. Give me another chance, please. This time you won't be disappointed, he pleaded. Yes, he fell for the next trap. I said to myself. Okay, no problem. I snapped. I dragged him to the dance floor downstairs. I purposely stayed in the middle of the stage to call for attention, which I got. I placed Stuart's hands on my buttocks and added pressure on the hand so that he could squeeze those cheeks. Stuart raised up his head, feeling he was on top of the world. After a while, I perceived his hand vibrating on my buttock. I turned around, positioned my buttock between his two legs, and placed his hand over my chest. We danced to the loud music. I increased the intensity by stroking up and down on his laps with my backside. Within a few minutes, and can feel his wet pant on my mini skirt. I turned around at once. What is the meaning of this? I said aggressively. Everyone looked at us and quickly found out what had happened. Everyone started laughing at Stuart. He was ashamed of himself and ran out of the party, trying not to cry. I had a bizarre smile on my face. One down, many more to go, I said to myself. I watched him leave and continued dancing. I got the attention I needed that night. I knew I had laid the first brick. And now it would be easier for me to catch more fish in my cunning net. I didn't tell my sister on the phone about the news. I wanted to be perfect before proclaiming myself. On my checklist of naughtiness, the next and most preferential thing to do is change my friends. I needed to start walking with the most incredible, hottest, and sweetest girls in school. I was not a fan of doing things gradually. I wanted to move with the speed of a power horse. Had I known, I would have taken the stairs instead of the elevator. The second day at school, I was a different Stacy. My friends couldn't understand, so they left me alone with my madness. I caught the attention of everyone, even Mr. Collins, the history teacher, who won't fall for the girl that purposely walked within the school premises like Lady Gaga with the shape of Angelina Jolie and the face of Nicki Minaj. The focus of the school just changed from outstanding academic records to having an intimidating moment with me. "Hello, girlie," a voice standing next to my desk said. I knew that voice was Britney's, the head of the Beatles, a group that had been terrorizing the school with their stony beauty. "Hi, Britney," I said with the sweetest voice possible. I raised my head to look at her face. She handed me a sheet of paper and left. That's normal, what else did I know Britney for? She's rude. I opened the article to read what was written. Atlas Corner. Cinema stall room, 4 p.m., don't be late, love from Britney, was written jaggedly on the piece of paper. I grinned a little. Yes, I said to myself. Mission accomplished. I could not concentrate anymore in class. I was eager to meet my new friend. The Beatles. I get on rationalizing how the crew will start doing things with me involved. The numbers of boys that will ask me out in a day. The guys I will pretend I am interested in just to embarrass them. And so many other naughty and rude kinds of stuff finding their feet in my mind. I tried getting them away from my mind, but they remained stocked. Since I could not help it, I kept on enjoying the fantasy. Immediately I heard the bell. I took my things, trying hard not to rush since that was my usual self. I got my bag, this time. I had a handbag instead of the typical Scotch bag. I headed straight to the cinema stall room behind the theater. I followed Britney's direction by heart. I got to the meeting point. I never knew that place could be that dark and dusty. I saw the light at the end of the little passage. I walked through different artistries to the light. And I tried not to drop anything, which would have been a mess. I got to where I saw the ray. Behold, Lucy and Pinky. Those two were a pain in the ass, so annoying and disrespectful. I checked my wristwatch. It was 3:52 p.m. Wow. I didn't get late to my induction party. I whispered to myself. Hello, ladies, I greeted the two girls. They did not respond nor show any gesture. It was as if I was not there. The two girls glued their faces on their phones and kept laughing and talking. Those two are good at keeping each other's company. Since I had been ideally ignored, I got myself a wooden box and made myself comfortable. Pinky looked at me as if she would say something impish, but instead continued with her gist. I brought out my phone and started checking my emails. That wasn't necessary because I wanted to while away the time while I longed for the arrival of Britney. Finally, Britney showed up. I checked my time to know the exact time. It was 4 p.m. on the dot. God, the girl is punctual. At last, she got that virtue. She wasn't all bad anyway. Before I could stand to greet her, the two older girls surrounded her and took a few shots with their phones. After the supposed greeting, she introduced me to the group. That was really unnecessary since we were all classmates. But I played along with it anyways. Will you like to be a Beatle? Brittany asked. I was shocked with nothing to say. But inside I was euphonious. I tried to be the tough girl they thought I was. You're wasting time asking me. I'm here already. Brittany smiled beautifully. I like this girl, she said while pointing her index finger towards me. Straight away, the two other girls started talking to me. They told me unique pieces of stuff. I wasn't intrigued, nor was I surprised by their sudden change of attitude. It was acting. And I know for sure that I just got enrolled into the school of acting. The girls helped me with all my social media accounts. Posted my picture everywhere. I took a couple of photos later uploaded. And boom, my followers started increasing. I couldn't believe that. It was as if the followers had been waiting for that moment to come to their whole life. I was introduced to some rules on how to operate flawlessly in the group. The regulations, in summary. Be rude and naughty. Isn't that why I took the appointment? Life just got more straightforward, or rather terrible. Only time will tell. Everything was going according to plan. I now walked with the most popular group in school. And dated some big boys. The one for me was that I became the most sought after in school just a few weeks after joining the Beatles. Lucy and Pinky were getting jealous, but couldn't do much since Brittany was okay with it. I knew but didn't care. For me, I am yet to achieve my goal. No one had knelt down for me yet. Within a month after my induction, I started going out with Frank. Frank was from a wealthy family. I never knew his old man, but I heard the man is the chief executive officer of a tech company. Well, without doubt. I believe because Frank did brag about his father's achievement. All he had of himself were gargets and more gargets. The relationship was so dull. The guy was just too direct. All he thinks of is what lies under my panties. Such a naughty dude. I managed to play along with the supposed relationship. Frank had so much luxury stuff and went out with rich kids like him. He was fond of me. He showed me off to his friends every time as if I was a priceless antique to be auctioned. Though he was proud, this dude knows how to spoil a lady. I made sure my mum didn't know about my relationship with Frank. She wouldn't have supported the union. Frankly speaking, what kind of single mum will help such? Her ignorant is the best for me. I had more mischievous plans to pull. Frank had a party with his wealthy friends and decided to take me along one of those days. I saw this as a significant opportunity to pull the ditching string. I told my mum that I would be sleeping over in my friend's place. She agreed. I took off one of my beautiful dresses and a heel to match. And off I went. I stopped at Brittany's place to change into the gown. I called Frank and told him to come and pick me at Brittany's home. A few hours had gone, and finally, the lover boy showed up. I exchanged kisses and told him that Brittany would love to tag along with us. Since Frank handed her a glass of champagne, she had been with her phone. Sometimes it looks like that is her real world. And here it is, virtual. Frank and I tried to make chemistry. But it wasn't perfect since the two of us had a different reason for dating each other. And love is omitted. I was dating him because he is rich and famous. And I needed such a feat to prove myself in this new game I play. Frank was dating me because he just wanted to show his friend. The driver opened the door with Brittany stepping out first. Then Frank, who helped me by taking my hands. It was like a fairy tale. So, many reporters were present. There were camera flashes everywhere. Brittany was eager to face the crowd to earn more popularity while Frank waved at them. But I was able to hide my face perfectly. My mum mustn't see such things. It was a grand entry, to be candid. I met several children of vibrant personnel in the state. Every person was VIP. The first time I enjoyed such a feat. Everything was going on smoothly. Brittany had succeeded in entangling herself with another boy. She disappeared with the new guy. I guess someone went to get dirty. I couldn't do much. I purposely made sure Brittany was here so that I could pull a perfect trick. But now she's nowhere to be found. Actually, I enjoyed myself. It was an elaborate get-together. I got everything I never tasted by just demanding. The party was going on fine while I was looking for an opportunity to create a scene. Finally, Brittany was back in the room. And Frank was busy chatting with his friends about their most expensive possession. How is that a discussion? I really didn't fit in too much. But Brittany fitted in perfectly. The girl is Tiffany in the making. Such a good actress, I must oblige. The moment had finally come. I saw a glass of red wine with Frank. He was about to turn back when I rushed towards him, making him spill the wine on the silver white dress I wore. "What have you done?" I retorted. It was a perfect first attack. He tried to draw me away from his friends and pleaded with me for the spillage. I pushed him back. "You ruined my dress," I shouted at him. Still trying to avoid the disgraceful moment. He wanted to draw me from the crowd. I slapped him. Where did that boldness come from? I couldn't believe I could do that. I was terrified within me, but yet every bit of my plan was coming to play in the perfect order. Just the way I wanted it. Brittany, doing what she knew how to do best, had started live streaming. Then the rich man's kid apologized. "I am very sorry, I didn't mean to spill the wine on your dress. You should understand that it was an accident." "Accident? I ruined my dress. And you said it was an accident," I barked. The rich kid went down on his knees and apologized. I got a glass of wine and poured the content on him. I regretted the action immediately. But the awesomeness on Brittany's face comforted me. Brittany and I left the party to her place. She praised me as if I had just conquered a gladiator. I wasn't pleased with myself. Who does that? Brittany was full of my praise. Before I saw the video myself, she had uploaded it. I later found out when browsing with her personal computer later that night. To my surprise, so many people had shared it. I got to school. I looked around for Frank, though I wasn't planning to apologize. I just wanted to see him for no reason whatsoever. I could not find him anywhere. I couldn't send a call through. Hudson later blew the news. He had left the city for another country. At that moment, I knew that it was a game over. Times passed, then came Brad. Brad was a transfer student from another city. This boy was the kind of boy Mama would be proud of. He looked older than his age. But after some research, the rest of the Beatles and I found out he is just 17. No, this can't be the truth. The guy looked so mature. Within the first few weeks in school, several girls had fought because of him. The Beatles were also in incoherence on this case. That will be the first time as far as I could recall. Every hot babe demands a hot guy, I guess. For the first in forever, Lucy, Pinky, and Brittany fought and never reconciled. I was still a great associate to Brittany while Lucy and Pinky enjoyed each other company. I wasn't interested in this guy because of his insane popularity. But having him for myself will significantly benefit me. It would increase my charm by miles. "Hello babe," that was Brittany by my desk. Everyone now sees us as best pals. Brittany was not to be trusted. That babe was a big snitch. She told me she approached Brad how she felt about him and Brad turned down her approach. "I want revenge," she said. Well, that's what I was good at. "No problem," I replied. I knew I was irresistible. Every high school can't afford to lose me once they are opportune. I started walking towards Brad. I wanted him to notice me, but frankly, the guy was tough. Later he fell. One afternoon, we met at the Dome one afternoon. He bumped onto me accidentally. And my science project fell. He picked up the pieces and reassembled them as quickly as he could go. I was impressed. "Can you have a cup of coffee with me? If you don't mind," I asked of him. "I would rather have a bottle of beer with you at a bar," he responded. I smiled. I like this kind of guy. "So, a date it is," I rejoined. We said our bye-byes, and the two of us went our separate ways. I chatted up Brittany immediately. She was amazed. And she drew her plan. It was a perfect plan and would make this big guy have a significant fall. Brittany is undoubtedly next to the devil in deeds. After the chat, I started having mixed feelings. I wasn't so sure, but it was like I was beginning to like this dude. Brad is handsome, and to my experience, he is far from how Brittany described him. And everyone knows is that when Brittany said it is raining outside, you need to go and check for yourself. I decided to take note of this guy to see for myself. On Friday, Brad and I finally met at a bar to take some beers. The bartender didn't bother to ask for our age, judging by Brad's enormous stature. We got ourselves an empty site and yacked away the whole time. The boy was amusing to be with. I got drunk, don't judge me. I don't drink. He got us a taxi and took me home. Most guys would have taken advantage of me that night. But he didn't. He dropped me at the door and introduced himself to my mum. I slept off on the couch. The following day was a weekend. I woke at noon. My mum gave me a spicy soup to drink. I took it. I was damn hungry. She set the table for lunch. And while we were taking the meal, most of the dining discussion was about Brad. It seemed my mum liked him. And so was I. For the first time, I can say I am really interested in someone. Later that day, I called my sister. We chatted a lot. She told me that Mum had told her about the whole thing. We both laughed about it. I said about the association between the Beatles and me and how we separated. She advised me to detach myself from such friendship. I knew she was right, and she was speaking from experience. But I had gone deep into these things. I didn't know how to call it short anymore. Brad and I started seeing each other frequently. You could tell something was going on between the two of us. But there had not been any official proposal. So, friends are the best you could call this kind of thing. And for a while, I had not been on talking terms with Brittany. We were not in disagreement, but just that we can't agree on a thing anymore. I started walking with my old friends. They had been waiting for me to get myself out of the madness I was in. You could tell that Brielle talked some sense into me. Brittany had noticed my lack of cooperation. And she had reconciled with the old Beatles members. Things just got worse for my companies and me. It was apparent that Brad only wanted to be a friend since his girlfriend regularly visited him from his previous school. I wasn't bothered, my friendship with him was worthwhile. Brittany tried to get to Brad, trying all her cunning moves. But I did give Brad a head start in the game. You could call me a snitch. It is fine, I am tired of seeing people get hurt. Most guys later found out that Brad and I were just friends. The long-awaiting suitors started coming up with their approaches. This time I was unnecessarily rude as I was. I realized I had been a bad bitch for so long. And many had been said about me. A lot of good people had been avoiding me. And I didn't notice. I was blindfolded by the things Brittany fed me with. My goal was to be popular and nothing more. I picked up so many lousy virtues on my way to fame. And my sister came out to be nicer than I taught. I was so much ashamed of the past few months. I received a few proposals and ignored the others. But none lasted for a month. With some lasting just a few days. I could get entangled with a guy today and tomorrow. He is no more interested in me. I was so much in need of a guy I could call my boyfriend. But to no avail. It was as if there was a famine of boys. No one lasted for at least a month. My hunt for a boyfriend increased. I refused to turn down people's approaches, but all ended within a short while. I told Brielle about this, she couldn't devise a means to solve the problem. I guessed she didn't know all too. I took up the courage to speak with Brad since we were good friends. I asked him what guys wanted in ladies. He couldn't give me a straight answer too. Even Stuart came knocking at the door again. This time, it looked like a payback. He ditched me before I even fell in love with him. What the hell is happening to me? It was as if the whole school planned to get back at me for my evil deeds. I needed a drastic change. I wanted things to go back to when I was that innocent beauty. I tried to redeem myself. Who am I to meet? Who is the head of these, or the whole school is just acting on this simultaneously? I could not figure out anything. I was confused. Who is behind all these? The Beatles and I had parted ways for a while now. We don't really exchange greetings. I really don't bother at first until recently. I had started thinking if they were involved in the dismay. This is what the group of girls is known for. And this is what they do best. They are better at tarnishing images than doing well in school. I started suspecting their moves and began to keep tags on them, hunting them with their own skills. After several weeks of monitoring their movements, I could not take them red-handed even though all accusing fingers pointed at them. I started checking on my friends after a failed attempt on the Beatle. They weren't shady, to be candid, but I didn't want to leave any stone unturned. Checking on them is really convenient since we are always together, but I can't predict their actions once they get home. I made it a habit to sleep periodically at their place. Even though they stayed up at night, it wasn't a reason to call the accused. After another futile effort, I thought of Brad. Can Brad stoop so low to that level? I don't know who to trust and who not to. I began another investigating job on him. I could tell the guy noticed my motive but did not care since he didn't find any reason for me to do that. For sure, he is not the one, but since he knows about what is going on, he is still a suspect but not prime. Brielle is the next on my list. She is miles away from home, but I can't afford to get her off the list. She called me more often than she did in the past. We shared more moments together and chatted a lot about our lives. Some about her school life and maybe fashion and some girls' talk. Things were smoother betwixt us. She had been my best friend in the past, but now I think she can make something up. But wait, why will she want to do me any harm? What will she gain from that? I am her little sister, and she is my whole world. Even if I tried to pop my nose in her matters, I could not do that well since she barely came home. She only comes on holiday. I don't know what to do and who to hold the victim. I don't like this period. I want to disappear from the surface of the earth before I become the laughingstock at school. Who can be involved in this evil act? Can it be the Beatles? My friends, Brad or Brielle? What do you think? Do you think? Do you think? Do you think?